Chapter 927. The people from the Great Guangming Temple and the Chunyang Dao sect had all arrived. Naturally, the people from Jiangshan Pavilion were here as well. However, there were only a few people from Jiangshan Pavilion. They were here to talk to Xiang Long. After all, Jiangshan Pavilion was going to take over Wei County. Moreover, it was related to Jiangshan Pavilion's plan to restore their country. They had to pay attention to it no matter what. On the horses, 3 people stood side by side. They were all dressed in luxurious clothes and had an extraordinary aura. Looking at the people from the Chunyang Dao sect and the Buddhist sect, a handsome warrior in his 30s said, "Big brother, this time, the Northern Yan Emperor wants to help Jiangshan Pavilion restore our country. It seems that he has made a big move. Even the Chunyang Dao sect and the Great Guangming Temple have been encouraged by him. I wonder what he wants to do." The man whom he called Big Brother looked to be in his 50s. However, the vicissitudes between his brows could not be concealed. He was like an old man who had seen through the world. This man was the current pavilion master of Jiangshan Pavilion, Zhao Yuanfeng. The Zhao family of Jiangshan Pavilion used to be the royal family. Even the core of the entire Jiangshan Pavilion was based on the Zhao family. There were also the descendants of the loyal officials of the Zhao family in the past. Zhao Yuanfeng said in a deep voice, "Yuani, don't worry about the internal affairs of the Northern Yan. You only need to remember one thing. Since the establishment of Jiangshan Pavilion, we have been trying to take back the country that belongs to the Zhao family. The affairs of the Northern Yan Imperial Court and the Northern Yan Jianghu have nothing to do with Jiangshan Pavilion. Now, Jiangshan Pavilion is only here to restore our country." At this time, an old voice behind Zhao Yuanfeng suddenly said, "Yuanfeng, it's not that I want to criticize you, but you are wrong. Since Jiangshan Pavilion wants to restore our country, then the current 3 kingdoms will be changed to 4 kingdoms. Whether it is Eastern Qi, Western Chu, or Northern Yan, they are all future enemies of our Jiangshan Pavilion. How can we not pay attention to them?" Zhao Yuanfeng frowned slightly and said faintly, "Understood, granduncle." Zhao Yuanfeng was a little impatient with the old man behind him, while his younger brother, Zhao Yuani, was disgusted. He was a member of the Jiangshan Pavilion Elders Guild. The so-called Elders Council, in Zhao Yuani's eyes, was just a place where a bunch of old farts gathered together. They had no ability, but they liked to point fingers at others. Although Jiangshan Pavilion was a descendant of the royal family, it no longer looked like a descendant of the royal family. Instead, it looked more like a combination of a sect and a family in the Jianghu. According to the imperial family's way of doing things, who cared if you were an elder or not? Since you were not the emperor, you should just obediently be a hired thug. Interfering with the imperial family's authority was a great taboo. According to the Jianghu's way of doing things, there were many masters with different surnames in Jiangshan Pavilion. They were all descendants of those loyal officials in the past, so they should be promoted to high positions. However, it was precisely because these old guys said that Jiangshan Pavilion could only be controlled by themselves. How could they hand it over to a servant? Therefore, a large number of masters of Jiangshan Pavilion were bitterly disappointed. They fled overseas or to the Central Plains, parting ways with Jiangshan Pavilion. Fortunately, his elder brother, Zhao Yuanfeng, was outstanding and talented. He had stepped into the true fire spirit refinement realm and could be considered to have the qualifications to challenge the Elders Guild. That was why he stood his ground against the objections of the masses and had been developing his overseas forces for the past 10 years. He had occupied many islands and recruited subordinates wantonly, allowing the strength of the rivers and mountains pavilion to rise to another level. However, in Zhao Yuani's eyes, his eldest brother was definitely comparable to those in the top 10 on the list. If it wasn't for these old guys holding them back, the development of Jiangshan Pavilion wouldn't just be one level higher. They would probably be able to reach the peak. Zhao Yuani wanted to say something, but Zhao Yuanfeng waved his hand and said, "All right, that's enough. Let's go into the city. Hearing his eldest brother say that, Zhao Yuanyi followed him into the city, feeling a little depressed. At the city gate, Chu Xiu stood there, waiting for the people from the Great Light Temple and the Chunyang Dao sect to enter the city. Looking at Chu Xiu, who was dressed in black, standing with his hands behind his back, the soldiers guarding the city all shrunk to the side carefully. Su Yan and Shi Yunzi frowned at almost the same time. They knew the benefits of entering the Northern Yan sect to preach, but they also knew the consequences. Yanjing City, the core region of the Northern Yan sect, had always been Chu Xiu's territory. As long as they entered Yanjing City and started interfering with the Jianghu affairs of the entire Northern Yan sect, not only would they have to compete with them, but they would also offend Chu Xiu. Xiang Long was getting someone else to do his dirty work. They understood that, but they still came. It wasn't that they looked down on Chu Xiu, but the conditions and temptation that Xiang Long offered were too great, so great that they couldn't refuse. Master Su Yan, long time no see. Daoist Shi Yunzi, I didn't expect you to come this time. Has the Chunyang Dao sect declined to such an extent? Chu Xiu greeted the two of them with a bright smile on his face. That smile was extremely bright. Chu Xiu stood there like a harmless young master, but Su Yan and Shi Yunzi knew that under that seemingly harmless smile of Chu Xiu's, there was actually a lot of blood and slaughter hidden within. Shi Yunzi let out a long sigh and said in a deep voice, I'm just an ordinary disciple of the Chunyang Dao sect. I've never thought of myself as special. Since the sect asked me to do so, of course I had to do it. What's so strange about that? The disciples of the Chunyang Dao sect who came with Shi Yunzi all looked at him with surprise. In the Chunyang Dao sect, this little uncle master was not well liked. Most of the disciples of the Chunyang Dao sect thought that he was pompous and did not act like a Daoist master at all. However, when it came to business, Shi Yunzi behaved himself. At least, he would not embarrass the Chunyang Dao sect. Su Yan shook his head and said, Official Chu, you should know why we're here in Yanjing City. We also know why you're here. Official Chu, you're a smart man. You should know that the main reason for this isn't us. The Great Light Temple has no intention of becoming enemies with you at this time. However, we can't help ourselves in the Jianghu. I hope you can understand. Chu Xiu shook his head and said, We can't help ourselves in the Jianghu. Well said. Master Su Yan can see it very clearly. Chu Xiu's expression turned grave as soon as he said that. However, I, Chu Xiu, am also a person in the Jianghu. Can I help myself in the things I do? The Zhenwu clan has been operating in the northern Yan Jianghu for many years. The order has been completely established. Now that the two of you have come, you want to destroy this order. I can tolerate it, but the entire Zhenwu clan can't. Su Yan put his palms together and chanted the name of Buddha. Official Chu, I can only guarantee that the Great Light Temple won't start a war easily. Shi Yunzi, who was at the side, also said, Senior brother sect leader has already said that the karma between the two sides will be put aside for the time being. This time, the Chunyang Dao sect didn't come specifically to become enemies with you, Official Chu. Mako Mori was sizing up Chu Xiu at the moment. Back when he was in closed-door cultivation, there was no such person as Chu Xiu in the Jianghu. Not to mention Chu Xiu, even Qinqing Di had not shown any signs at that time. In the end, the world had changed in just a few decades. Now, such a junior martial artist actually had the ability to stir up the world? Just as the atmosphere between the two sides was very tense, the people from Jiangshan Pavilion walked over. Actually, Zhao Yuanfeng did not want to have any dealings with Chu Xiu. Of course, Zhao Yuanfeng knew about the Zhenwu clan's viceroy, who had recently become famous in the Jianghu. In fact, he knew him in detail. After all, there were not many people in the entire Jianghu who did not know Chu Xiu. Jiangshan Pavilion only focused on the overseas region. It was not that they did not pay attention to the Central Plains warriors' movements. However, this time, although Jiangshan Pavilion had joined the overall situation, Jiangshan Pavilion's target was only Wei County. As long as they could manage Wei County well, they did not care about what the northern Yan would be like. Therefore, when he saw Chu Xiu and the others secretly quarreling at the city gate, he wanted to keep a low profile and go around the small door at the side. However, the Zhao clan's elder frowned and rushed to say, "Everyone, don't block the gate if you don't want to go in." As soon as he said this, Zhao Yuanfeng secretly cursed. As expected, the gazes of the three parties turned to the direction of Jiangshan Pavilion at the same time. "People from Jiangshan Pavilion?" Chu Xiu said faintly. The Zhao clan's elder said proudly, "Yes. To be precise, we are the Zhao clan's royal family. After I meet your majesty, it will not take long for us to restore our country. If you want to resolve the grievances between you and the Daoists and Buddhists, go somewhere else. Don't block the way here." When this elder of the Zhao family was born, the Zhao family had not yet been destroyed. Therefore, he was still contaminated with some of the habits of the royal family. He was not like Zhao Yuanfeng and the others, who were almost no different from the people of the Jianghu. They did things purely with the eyes of the people of the Jianghu. Previously, Zhao Yuanfeng had told the Zhao clan's elder not to offend Xiang Long. Of course, the elder knew this. Even if Zhao Yuanfeng didn't say it, he would still pay attention. The royal family's etiquette could not be forgotten. However, Zhao Yuanfeng forgot to tell him not only not to offend Xiang Long, but also not to offend important officials like Chu Xiu who had great influence in northern Yan. In the past, when the Zhao clan was still a royal family, it could be said that their words carried enormous weight. In reality, small countries like the Zhao clan's royal family could not have too much influence in the country. Therefore, in the eyes of the Zhao clan's elder, this Chu Xiu was only a northern Yan official, while his Jiangshan Pavilion's Zhao clan was of royal origin. They were qualified to be on equal footing with the Xiang clan's royal family. Of course, not in terms of strength, at least in terms of status. Facing a northern Yan official, the Zhao clan's elder thought that his attitude was polite enough. In fact, he was even giving face to Xiang Long. Chu Xiu looked at the people of the River Mountain Pavilion, and his lips suddenly curled into a cold smile. Block the way? How dare a group of impoverished people, whose country had almost been destroyed by others, clamor here? Yanjing City is not a place where you can put on airs. Even if His Majesty summons you, if I don't want to let you in, who would dare to open the door? Hearing this, the Zhao clan's elder flew into a rage. How dare you? How dare you? Does the Northern Yan Imperial Court have any rules? Rules? When His Majesty is here, his words are the rules. When His Majesty is not here, my words are the rules. As soon as he finished speaking, the aura around Chu Xiu's body shot up to the sky and he directly punched at the Zhao clan's elder. Su Yan and Shi Yunzi were very experienced and hid at the side. Chu Xiu was a madman. Before this, they did not want to provoke Chu Xiu at this time. Since someone was willing to help Chu Xiu vent his anger, they were more than happy to help. Chapter 928. There were many people in this world who felt good about themselves, and the elder of Jiangshan Pavilion was one of them. Although he had heard of Chu Xiu's reputation, his view was completely different from that of Zhao Yuanfeng. In Zhao Yuanfeng's view, Chu Xiu was the heir of the Yinma clan. Even the northern Yan Zhenwu Hall had a faint tendency to be independent. The other party was definitely not to be trifled with. However, in the eyes of the elder of the Zhao family, the other party was also a minister of the northern Yan. How could the words ruler and minister be taken lightly? He had never thought that Chu Xiu would actually attack him right in front of him. Chu Xiu had no scruples at all, and had even said that Xiang Long's absence meant that his words were the rules. Feeling the pressure in the punch, the elder of the Zhao family suddenly felt a chill in his heart. He was also a warrior in the true fire spiritual refinement realm, and it had been a long time since he entered the true fire spiritual refinement realm. In the past, when the Zhao family was chased by the enemy country like a stray dog, it was the former experts of the royal family who protected the last trace of the Zhao family's bloodline to escape to the East Sea. The elder of the Zhao family was one of those people. During the pursuit, there were all kinds of strong pressures on the body. As long as one could survive, there was almost no weak person. However, after he entered the Elders' Guild, he lived like a prince and had not fought with anyone for a long time. At this time, Chu Xiu's punch gave the elder of the Zhao family a feeling. It was the same feeling of despair that he had when he was facing the endless pursuit in the past. The elder of the Zhao clan roared furiously, and light blue gang qi condensed around his body. Then, he slammed his palm down, and the powerful palm force surged like the waves of the vast sea, making deafening sonic booms. However, Chu Xiu's punch contained extreme strength. His body that was tempered by the inner force and true fire was indestructible. In addition, Chu Xiu also used the Black Tortoise true skill as the fist intent of the mountain and sea fist scripture. This punch even had the power to shatter mountains. Seeing his own palm power collapse under Chu Xiu's punch, the Zhao family elder's expression changed greatly. If the young man in front of him took out some amazing martial skill, he would still have the confidence to block it. However, this pure suppression of power caused him to feel powerless. All kinds of mystical arts and secret techniques had their weaknesses. Only extreme power had no weaknesses. Right at this moment, Zhao Yuanfeng suddenly made a move. He also struck out with his palm, but in an instant, he condensed the water vapor within a radius of several thousand feet. The water droplets froze in midair, blocking the path of Chu Xiu's fist. The seemingly weak water droplets contained the power of heaven and earth. When Chu Xiu's power hit the water droplets, it was strangely absorbed. Although most of the water droplets could not withstand this power and completely turned into water mist, they still blocked the power of Chu Xiu's punch. Chu Xiu glanced at Zhao Yuanfeng and said indifferently, "Water has no fixed shape. Hard and soft. The pavilion master of Jiangshan Pavilion is indeed extraordinary. It's just that the people below are too insensible. As the pavilion master, you didn't even say anything, but the others are barking like dogs here. Don't they have any respect for their superiors?" Hearing Chu Xiu say that he was barking like a dog, the Zhao family's elder's face immediately turned red. He was angry. However, before he could say anything, Zhao Yuanfeng had already stopped him and said in a deep voice, "Official Chu, I, Jiangshan Pavilion, have lived in the coastal border for a long time. I don't know much about the Central Plains warriors. I made a fool of myself and offended you, Official Chu. Please forgive me, Official Chu." His elder had caused trouble, and the one who came to clean up after him was Zhao Yuanfeng. He knew Chu Xiu's position in the northern Yan. Although he should not have any conflict or enmity with Chu Xiu, if his elder offended Chu Xiu, it would really be an undeserved disaster. Of course, Zhao Yuanfeng would not be too weak. He glanced at the Taoist and Buddhist sects and said, "Official Chu, I, Jiangshan Pavilion, have come here only to meet the Emperor of the Northern Yan. After that, I will immediately go to Wei Prefecture. From then on, I will no longer participate in the various disputes of the Northern Yan court or the Jianghu. Right now, the first problem that Official Chu wants to solve is not us. In fact, it will not be us in the future. On the contrary, we may have the possibility of cooperation in the future." Chu Xiu cast a deep glance at Zhao Yuanfeng. This pavilion master of the Rivers and Mountains Pavilion did not have a prominent reputation in the martial arts world of the Central Plains. However, based on the move he had just made and the words he had said, Chu Xiu was able to determine that this person was a character. Don't think that the overseas region was easier to live than the Central Plains warriors. Wherever there were people, there would be Jianghu. Since it was Jianghu, there would be no lack of killings and disputes. The Central Plains was a vast land with abundant resources. If they could not win, they could still escape. If they managed to escape, they could just find a place to recuperate. After all, revenge was a dish best served cold. However, in the overseas region, outside the islands was the vast sea. Losing would basically mean death. The fact that Jiangshan Pavilion could occupy a few islands in such a cruel place like the open sea was enough to show Zhao Yuanfeng's means and strength. Right at this moment, Xiang Chong heard some news from somewhere and hurried over. Although Xiang Long's purpose of bringing the Taoist, demon, and Buddhist lineages here was to suppress Chu Xiu, it was not right for them to fight at the city gate on the first day they met. Therefore, he rushed over in time to stop them. Xiang Chong even brought the 9-dragon seal. He was afraid that Chu Xiu would go crazy and turn against him with Shang Tianliang. Of course, Xiang Chong was different. With Shang Tianliang's level of battle prowess, Chu Xiu would not use it unless he was forced to reveal his dagger. Although he was crazy, he had to obtain something after going crazy. Otherwise, he would not go crazy for nothing. Although the atmosphere was tense, it seemed like there was no real fight. Xiang Chong heaved a sigh of relief and said in a deep voice, "Everyone, His Majesty is waiting for you. Follow me into the city." After saying that, Xiang Chong looked deeply at Chu Xiu and said calmly, "Official Chu, His Majesty is waiting for them. Can we talk about this later?" Chu Xiu smiled and said, "North Garrison King, you worry too much. I'm just here to welcome an old friend. Is that not enough?" Xiang Chong snorted and said, "I hope so." After the people from the Daoist and Buddhist sects and the River Mountain Pavilion left, Tangya said, "The River Mountain Pavilion has a great reputation in the overseas region. Now that I look at it, it seems that they are ignorant and stupid." Chu Xiu said calmly, "If everyone in the world is smart, then there is no way to survive. This is very normal. Some people have lived for hundreds of years and still do not understand. This has nothing to do with age. Don't laugh at others. There are many old people like this in the Yinma clan." Tangya nodded. That seemed to be the case. Tangya did not forget how the 3 big shots of the Yinma clan had come to denounce them. They had gone too far. The probing at the city gate had made Chu Xiu understand. Although Xiang Long was old and on the verge of death, he was a hero who had led the rise of Northern Yen. He was not an easy person to deal with. He had used the tactics of combining the vertical and the horizontal, driving the tiger to swallow the wolf, and so on. For an emperor, he did not have to know how to govern the country. There were plenty of civil officials who would help him govern. He also did not have to know how to fight a war. The generals of the 5 armies were more familiar with these things than him. However, as an emperor, he could not lack the ability to see the big picture. It was obvious that neither the Great Light Temple nor the Chunyang Dao sect could refuse Xiang Long's conditions. Even if they knew that this would anger Chu Xiu, even if they knew that Xiang Long was using someone else to kill him, they would still do it. This was because the price of using someone else was so high that they could not refuse. Just as Chu Xiu was about to go back and think of a plan, a person dressed like a butler walked in front of Chu Xiu and bowed. "Official Chu, His Highness invites you." Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows. "Your Highness?" The person said, "Of course, His Highness the Crown Prince. Xiang Chong is looking for me." The person dressed like a butler looked a little unhappy. He paused and said, "Sir, please be careful. His Highness is now the Crown Prince. It is not good for you to call him by his name." Chu Xiu could fall out with the Zhao clan elder, who was also in the true fire spiritual refinement realm but could not see him clearly because of words. However, he would not lower himself to the level of a servant because it would lower his status. Right now, he was only thinking about why Xiang Chong was looking for him. Xiang Chong had interacted with Chu Xiu before, but their relationship was not very deep. Previously, when Xiang Long had suppressed Chu Xiu had wanted to get Xiang Chong's help. However, after testing him, Xiang Chong had rejected him. From then on, Chu Xiu could tell what Xiang Chong's stance was. Since then, the two of them had no contact. Now that Xiang Chong had become the crown prince, could he still want to recruit him? As he thought about this, Chu Xiu said to the servant, "Lead the way." The servant brought Chu Xiu to the crown prince's palace. All these years, the crown prince's palace had been empty. Although it had been cleaned up, it was still messy and not suitable for living. However, Xiang Chong seemed to be afraid that he would lose his position. He could not wait to move into the crown prince's palace, regardless of whether this place was suitable for living. Chu Xiu waited in the simple and crude guest hall for a quarter of an hour before Xiang Chong came over. With a smile on his face, he said, "Sir Chu, I have neglected you. Please forgive me for not coming out to meet you." Glancing at Xiang Chong, Chu Xiu could almost see through Xiang Chong's inner thoughts with his eyesight. He was pleased and arrogant, but he tried his best to hide it. He did not want others to see it. Even his tone when speaking to Chu Xiu was different from before. It had become a little arrogant. Although Xiang Chong was a prince in the past, he still had to be courteous to a young talent like Chu Xiu who had a great reputation in the pugilistic world. Later, when Chu Xiu became the viceroy of the Jianghu Hall, Xiang Chong did not even have the qualifications to recruit him. He could only express goodwill. But now? He, Xiang Chong, has become the crown prince. In a few days, he will become the emperor of Northern Yan, but you, Chu Xiu, are being suppressed by imperial father both openly and secretly. Chu Xiu, have you ever regretted not submitting to me? Chapter 929. Chu Xiu did not say much about Xiang Chong's arrogant attitude after gaining the upper hand. It was normal for a young man to have little experience. He would get used to it after a few ups and downs. Therefore, Chu Xiu just said lightly, "I wonder why your highness is looking for me?" Xiang Chong sat boldly on Chu Xiu's seat of honor. He did not look as courteous and cautious as he did before. He waved his hand and said, "Official Chu, there is no need to resort to insinuations. Now that both Taoism and Buddhism have entered the city, I'm afraid the days of Jianghu Hall will not be easy. I have known you for many years, Official Chu. Naturally, I want to help you, but this is my father's decision, and I can't do anything about it. But Official Chu, rest assured, as long as you are willing to assist me and temporarily break up Jianghu Hall and merge it into the Crown Prince's palace, when I inherit the throne, I will naturally find a way to help you rebuild Jianghu Hall. And I believe it will not take too long. Official Chu, I remember many years ago, when you were still on the Longhu list and had not become famous in Jianghu, I wanted to recruit you, Official Chu, but Official Chu, you refused. Now, Official Chu, you have become famous in Jianghu, but I have also become the heir of Great Yan from a prince who has no power. I wonder if I am qualified to recruit you, Official Chu?" When Xiang Chong said this, his heart was full of joy. Before he became the crown prince, Chu Xiu actually felt that Xiang Chong was not bad. Because of Xiang Li's suppression, the prince did not have much of the arrogant temperament of the royal family. Instead, he had a little more of the generosity of Jianghu. At that time, Xiang Chong yearned for Jianghu. In the northern Yan, he was suppressed by Xiang Li and could not see any hope. For him, he wished he could be a Jianghu ranger instead of being born in an imperial family. Every day, he was on tenterhooks and could not see freedom and hope. Yet now, a single sentence from Xiang Long had allowed him to completely turn the tables on Xiang Chong and become the inheritor and controller of this enormous empire. This enormous gap was sufficient to cause Xiang Chong's entire mentality to change, and this sort of change was something that even Xiang Long hadn't expected. In Xiang Long's plan, Xiang Chong only needed to watch the three forces of Taoism, Buddhism, and Diabolism suffer a great loss, and then restore Jiangshan Pavilion to become a barrier against Eastern Qi. Then, he would inherit the throne. That would be enough. Who would have thought that Xiang Chong would be so arrogant and come to recruit Chu Xiu, and even make such a promise? In his heart, Xiang Chong, Xiang Xiu, Xiang Chong, and Xiang Xiu, and Li, Xiang, and Xiang, Xiang, and Xiu, Xiang, 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 and Li, not. As for Chu Xiu, he could not be considered hateful. However, when he had been rejected by Chu Xiu when he tried to recruit him, it was like a thorn in his heart. That scene made him feel that Chu Xiu looked down on him. Now that he had become the crown prince, Chu Xiu was facing danger from all sides. Would Chu Xiu reject his invitation? Do you dare to refuse? Looking at Chu Xiu below, a smile appeared on Xiang Chong's face. It was a smile that he had learned from his father, Xiang Long, as if he had a card up his sleeve. However, when placed on Xiang Chong's face, it seemed a little awkward. Chu Xiu didn't get angry. He just said lightly, "Your Highness, did you sleep too much because you were suddenly announced as the crown prince a few days ago? This is not a good thing. The Northern Yan Empire will need your Highness to shoulder it in the future. You must pay attention to your health." Hearing Chu Xiu's words, the smile on Xiang Chong's face froze. He knew what Chu Xiu meant. Chu Xiu was saying that he was daydreaming. Xiang Chong jumped to his feet with a gloomy expression. However, he swallowed the words that were about to come out of his mouth. Although he had indeed been overly excited by the news of the crown prince, it didn't mean that he had become stupid from the shock. Even if he didn't know what his father had done at the time, the elders of the Xiang royal family had told him about it later on. Chu Xiu's forces were already so fearful that even Xiang Long did not dare to fall out with him, to the point where the Daoist and Buddhist lineages had to join forces to suppress him. Of course, he did not have the qualifications to fall out with Chu Xiu. Otherwise, he would be the one to be embarrassed. Therefore, Xiang Chong forcibly suppressed the anger in his heart and laughed loudly. Good, good, good. Official Chu is indeed official Chu. He is exactly the same as the official Chu from years ago. He hasn't changed at all. However, official Chu hasn't changed, but I am no longer the same as I was a few years ago. A few years ago, it took a lot of effort for me to ask a real pellet state martial arts grand master to be a guest. Now, there is already the top sword sage in the world to be my teacher. There is even a powerhouse of true fire spirit refinement state who took the initiative to join me. I heard that this person is an old friend of official Chu. Let's meet him today. Senior Li, please come out. As Xiang Chong's voice fell, a figure walked out of the inner hall. It was none other than Li Jiaodi who escaped from Chu Xiu last time. Seeing Li Jiaodi again, Chu Xiu was taken aback. This woman provoked me again, and now she even dares to appear in front of me. Is she really not afraid of death, or does she have something to rely on? Chu Xiu's gaze instantly darkened. Li Jiaodi, I let you escape last time and I can't be bothered to continue chasing after you. You should be thankful for that. Now, you still dare to appear in Northern Yan. Who gave you the courage? Who gave you the courage? Who? In the last battle in the Mahakala demon cult, Li Jiaodi was really scared by Chu Xiu. That kind of crushing power made her feel a sense of powerlessness. In the end, she had to use a secret technique to escape with her life, and she even almost suffered from qi deviation. If she hadn't been saved by someone and coincidentally solved her heart demon, her cultivation might have been crippled. So at this time, when Li Jiaodi faced Chu Xiu, although she still had the courage before, her face couldn't help but turn pale when she heard Chu Xiu's shout. Meanwhile, Xiang Chong said, Lord Chu, Senior Li is a revered elder of my crown prince's palace now. I didn't care about the enmity between the two of you in the past, but if you attack Senior Li now, then you're looking down on me. Teacher. As Xiang Chong shouted, Kong Dongming, the sword sage of the East Sea, appeared behind him. He was still holding his sword, looking sluggish. He didn't want to kill Chu Xiu, not even hostile. But Chu Xiu was sure that if he attacked here, the sword sage of the East Sea would definitely attack. Chu Xiu looked at Xiang Chong and narrowed his eyes. People who had followed Chu Xiu for a long time knew that when Chu Xiu showed this kind of expression, it usually meant that he was about to plot or kill someone. People who narrowed their eyes were generally very scary. Very good. It seems that your highness has a card up your sleeve. But I still have to advise your highness, some people can't be used. Those who harm their master will be very miserable after using them. After saying this, Chu Xiu turned around and left. With Kong Dongming around, Chu Xiu couldn't kill Li Jiaodi. Kong Dongming's title as the Sword Sage of the East Sea was not just for show. He had earned it through fighting. Shen Baochen of the Sword Hut and Shen Tianwang of the Sword King City had been defeated by him. One could imagine how strong his swordsmanship was. Although he couldn't compare to the sword sage Gu Qingsheng of 500 years ago, at least in the current martial arts world, there were not many people who could beat him in swordsmanship. For a person like Kong Dongming, besides swordsmanship, there was nothing else that could be stuffed into his head in this life. Only God knew what conditions Xiang Long had offered him that he could stay safely in northern Yen and stay by Xiang Chang's side as a teacher. However, if Chu Xiu wanted to kill someone, not even Gu Qingsheng, the sword saint of the Eastern Sea, could stop him. Not even Gu Qingsheng, the sword saint from 500 years ago, could stop him. But at this time in the Crown Prince's palace, Xiang Chong didn't care about Chu Xiu's threat at all. He just thought that Chu Xiu wanted to save some face. Xiang Chong said to Li Jiaodi, "Senior Li, please rest assured. As long as you can assist me, Chu Xiu can't touch you." Li Jiaodi nodded stiffly. She was a standard Jianghu person. Even if she joined the Yinma clan, she was only doing things alone. She was still a little unused to this kind of etiquette. But at this moment, a handsome young man in white with a jade-like face walked out from the side and put his arm around Li Jiaodi's waist in an extremely natural manner. He smiled at Xiang Chong and said, "Your Highness, don't worry. Now that you are the chosen one, we will definitely stand by your side." After returning to the Jianghu Hall, Chu Xiu first called Mei Qinglian over and told her what happened today. He asked, how did Li Jiaodi get involved with Xiang Chong? Mei Qinglian was also stunned. She knew Li Jiaodi. Perhaps it was the same sex repels each other. She had only interacted with Li Jiaodi a few times, but she also looked down on her. When she heard that Li Jiaodi had actually joined Xiang Chong's side, she immediately asked someone to investigate. The Jianghu Hall today was not the Jianghu Hall of the past. Many people joined later. Although it was not as good as the wind-sweeping building in terms of intelligence, at least it was still very useful around Yanjing City. After a while, Mei Qinglian received the information from the servants in the Crown Prince's palace. Mei Qinglian said with a strange expression, Li Jiaodi joined Xiang Chong because of her man. Chu Xiu was stunned when he heard this. Li Jiaodi has a man? Although Li Jiaodi seemed to still be attractive, it seemed that she was not young anymore. Mei Qinglian nodded and said, "Do you still remember Li Jiaodi's background? She was once abandoned by a man when she was young, so she almost didn't have a good attitude towards men. But after she was seriously injured by you last time, she met the descendant of the man who injured her, who was also Xiang Chong's guest, Lin Fengyu. His appearance was almost exactly the same as his ancestor. It was Lin Fengyu who saved Li Jiaodi. Because of his appearance, Li Jiaodi got rid of the demon in her heart and fell in love with him. Lin Fengyu even promised her that he would repay the love debt owed by his ancestor. From then on, Li Jiaodi listened to Lin Fengyu. She naturally came to join Xiang Chong because of Lin Fengyu. Chapter 930. After listening to Mei Qinglian's information, Chu Xiu's face was full of disbelief. He had countless conjectures before. For example, Li Jiaodi was angry that she suffered a loss last time, so she took advantage of him being suppressed by Xiang Long this time to find trouble with him. Or the other big shots of the Yinhua clan were dissatisfied with him, so they joined forces to pressure him and protect Li Jiaodi from behind. But he never thought that Li Jiaodi appeared by Xiang Chong's side because of a man. Chu Xiu said with a strange expression, "If I'm not wrong, Li Jiaodi is not young anymore, right? How old is that man? An old cow eating young grass?" Mei Qinglian waved her hand casually and said, "Of course not young. Anyway, he's much older than me. Lin Fengyu is a good-for-nothing. He only reached the innate realm when he was in his 20s by relying on the elixir left by his ancestors. The Lin family's ancestors were relatively glorious, but in his generation, they had completely declined. He was the only one left in the family, so he joined Xiang Chong, an unfavored prince, as a follower. And it's not that I look down on Li Jiaodi. She was dumped by a man at the beginning, and now, she has fallen into the hands of that man's descendant. She really doesn't learn from her mistakes. That man is not a good person. Maybe she will vomit blood again. Now, no matter what Li Jiaodi does, I won't be surprised. Love is the most harmful word, and it can make people lose their minds. Li Jiaodi was originally very paranoid and not very smart. Now, she has completely become an idiot." Chu Xiu wondered, "How do you know that Lin Fengyu is not a good person?" Mei Qinglian sneered and said, "How do you think I got the information?" Such a detailed thing was said by Lin Fengyu himself to Xiang Chong, and it was heard by the servants of the crown prince's residence. Then, they sold it to the spies of the Jianghu hall. Li Jiaodi is now deeply in love with him, but he sold Li Jiaodi in the blink of an eye. There are not many good men. Chu Xiu touched his nose and said, "Don't hurt the innocent. There is still a man in front of you." Mei Qinglian raised her eyebrows and rolled her eyes at him. "So you're saying that you're a good thing? Those who died at your hands definitely don't think so." Mei Qinglian's flirtatious look was so coquettish that even Chu Xiu fell into a trance. He asked in surprise, "Did you make a breakthrough in the great chick technique again?" Mei Qinglian raised her eyebrows and said, "My beauty is unparalleled. What does that have to do with my cultivation technique?" Chu Xiu touched his chin again. He wisely chose not to argue with Mei Qinglian on this issue. As long as she was a woman, she would always be confident in her own appearance. Men were very open-minded about this. Anyway, in this underworld, not many people relied on their faces to make a living. Of course, there were exceptions, such as Fang Qi Shao, who thought that his handsomeness was comparable to that of Lu Fengxian and felt very good about himself. Chu Xiu knocked on the table and said, "There is enough trouble. It doesn't matter if there is another Li Jiaodi. In fact, one Li Jiaodi is not even a problem. I rarely misjudge people, but I have to say that I have misjudged Xiang Chong. This person's desire for power has swelled to the point that it has become somewhat distorted." Mei Qinglian said, "From a prince with the lowest chance of inheriting the throne to the crown prince, and it won't take long for him to inherit the throne. With such a big pie falling on his head, if Xiang Chong doesn't twist it, then I'm afraid he is even more scheming than Xiang Long." Just as Chu Xiu was about to say something, someone suddenly came in to report that Xiang Li had come to visit. Mei Qinglian was surprised and said, "What is he here for? Could it be that he wants us to help him ascend the throne?" Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows and said, "Apart from this, what else can he do for us? Moreover, why can't we help him ascend the throne?" Mei Qinglian was suddenly stunned. To be honest, she really did not expect Chu Xiu to be so bold. All along, Mei Qinglian thought that Chu Xiu only wanted to protect himself, to protect the power and foundation of Jianghu Hall in northern Yen. Who would have thought that Chu Xiu's thinking was even more exaggerated? He actually wanted to intervene in the battle for the throne of northern Yen. If Chu Xiu did this, his opponent would not only be Xiang Long, but the entire northern Yen royal family and the northern Yen imperial court. Mei Qinglian still wanted to say something, but Chu Xiu turned and left. Behind him, Mei Qinglian shook her head. She did not intend to persuade Chu Xiu. He, Chu Xiu, had done many daring things. This one would not make much of a difference. In the meeting hall, when Xiang Li saw Chu Xiu, he rushed over and grabbed Chu Xiu's hand and shouted, "Official Chu! Save me! Help me!" Chu Xiu furrowed his brows. He slowly released his true qi, stabilizing Xiang Li's body and moving him away. He was not used to a man holding his hand. "Your Highness, don't be so agitated. The sky has not fallen and you are not dead yet. Why are you panicking?" After letting Xiang Li sit on the chair to calm down, Chu Xiu sized up the current Xiang Li. In just a few days, Xiang Li was almost unrecognizable. Although Xiang Li was arrogant before, he had the bearing of a member of the royal family. But now, Xiang Li was in a mess. He was not in the mood to tidy up his beard and hair. In addition, his eyes were bloodshot and sunken after a long period of insomnia. He looked miserable. During this period, Xiang Li was really about to be driven crazy. Not only did he give Xiang Chong the throne that he had hoped for so many years, he also knew that once Xiang Chong secured the throne, he would definitely be the first to be cut. All these years, he had suppressed Xiang Chong more than once or twice. Of course, he knew how much his 13th brother hated him. Once Xiang Chong ascended to the throne, would he still have a way out? Moreover, the fight for the throne had always been something that could not be spared. His father had even killed his own brother, who was born from the same mother, not to mention Xiang Chong. In the past few days, Xiang Li had seen the hypocrisy of the world. The forces that had promised to submit to him, including the military, the civil officials, and the nobles of the royal family, all left him decisively after he lost power. They threw themselves into Xiang Chong's arms, and he could do nothing about it. Originally, Xiang Li was drowning his sorrows in wine in his residence. In the end, he accidentally heard the news of the conflict between Chu Xiu and Xiang Chong. He suddenly thought of something. He had cooperated with Chu Xiu before. Even though Chu Xiu was being suppressed by Xiang Long now, the only one who could save him and dared to come to his rescue was Chu Xiu. Therefore, Xiang Li could not wait to go to him directly. He put down his dignity and everything else. When he saw Chu Xiu, it was as if he had grabbed hold of a life-saving straw. He refused to let go. Xiang Li took a deep breath and said in a low voice, "Official Chu, although I am not dead now, it is uncertain whether I will live or die in the future. Today, I came prepared for the worst. As long as Official Chu can save my life, I will hand over all my savings to you, Official Chu." In front of Chu Xiu, Xiang Li no longer addressed himself as a prince. To him, staying alive was more important than anything else. Chu Xiu said indifferently, "Your Highness, you don't have to worry so much. I have already said that the sky has not fallen and Xiang Chong has not succeeded the throne. You have been longing for the position of crown prince for more than a decade. Now that it is gone, are you really willing? If you are only thinking about staying alive, you will seem a little too cowardly." At this point, Chu Xiu's tone seemed to contain some kind of magic. When Xiang Li heard this, a strange light flashed in his eyes. "Your Highness, do you want to take back everything that belongs to you and ascend to the throne of the Northern Yan?" Xiang Li was stunned for a moment. Trembling slightly, he said, "Ascend to the throne of the Northern Yan? Do I still have a chance? That is an order from my imperial father. Everyone has already pledged their allegiance to Xiang Chong. He also has the Eastern Sea sword sage, Kong Dongming, as his master. He has also been blessed by the 9 dragons seal. In a day, he has everything that a crown prince should have. What can I use to fight against him?" "Fight with him?" Chu Xiu stood up and stared at Xiang Li. "I don't need you to fight with him. You don't need to fight with him. Just leave it to me. You just need to do as I say. I guarantee that I will help you ascend to the throne. Of course, you must listen to me. Otherwise, you will be a pile of mud." No matter how hard I try, I will not be able to stick it to the wall. Chu Xiu's words seemed to contain some sort of magic. Xiang Li's panicked heart calmed down a little. Looking at Chu Xiu, Xiang Li still trembled. Official Chu, can you really help me take back the throne? As long as you trust me, I can. Xiang Li still had some doubts. But Official Chu, why are you doing this? What do you stand to gain? Chu Xiu said calmly, the Northern Yen does not belong to your imperial father alone. The Northern Yen does not belong to the Xiang imperial family alone, and the Northern Yen does not belong to the Xiang imperial family alone. Xiang Chong has obtained everything that belongs to your imperial father. Of course, he will resolutely carry out your imperial father's policies. Therefore, if he becomes the emperor, it will affect my interests. I am very unhappy. If I help you ascend to the throne, I will help you guard the Northern Yen. The country is yours. The martial world is mine. Chu Xiu's wild ambition and blatant desire for power made Xiang Li feel even more at ease. Even if Chu Xiu only wanted to rule the Northern Yen with him, even if Chu Xiu wanted to become the emperor and leave him a lifetime of riches and honor, Xiang Li would be willing. No one was willing to die. Xiang Li did not want to die. Even if he had to sell everything, as long as he could live, he would do it. Therefore, Xiang Li didn't even think about it. He nodded heavily. As long as Official Chu can help me seize the throne, I will agree to anything. Half of the land of Northern Yen belongs to Xiang, and the other half belongs to Chu. Hearing this, Chu Xiu could not help but reveal a smile at the corner of his lips. Mei Qinglian was still listening outside the door. Of course, she wasn't eavesdropping. She was openly eavesdropping. When she heard Xiang Li's words, she couldn't help but shake her head at how easily he betrayed his country. Chu Xiu's methods were even more excessive than those of the sixth demon sect. They only triggered the demons in people's hearts. But Chu Xiu, even if people didn't have demons in their hearts, he could still drag them down the path of demons. Chapter 931. Xiang Li came at the right time. Even if he didn't come, Chu Xiu would come looking for him. Xiang Long's plan was to suppress the subduing martial hall. Xiang Chong, as his successor, had parted with Chu Xiu on bad terms today. He would definitely carry out Xiang Long's policy. It was unrealistic for Chu Xiu to overthrow the Xiang royal family and become the emperor. Therefore, the solution lay with Xiang Li. Knocking on the table, Chu Xiu said in a deep voice, Your Highness, do you remember that I once placed some people from the Yinma clan into the various departments of the Northern Yen? Chu Xiu had a sense of crisis. When he and Xiang Long fell out for the first time, Xiang Chong didn't choose to help him. At that time, he contacted Xiang Li and asked Xiang Li to place some people from the Yinma clan into the Northern Yen court. When the daggers were revealed, these people would be very useful. Xiang Li nodded and said, I have been doing this all the time. Now, I have placed many people. But now that I have lost power, those bastards are all on Xiang Chong's side. Now, my power is pitifully small. I can no longer place people from the Yinma clan into the other departments of the Northern Yen. Chu Xiu waved his hand and said, That doesn't matter. Are those people at risk of being discovered? Xiang Li shook his head and said, Absolutely not. Even the people who personally gave the order don't know who I placed. At that time, they were still obedient and didn't ask or inquire. Now that I have lost power, they have probably forgotten about this matter. Chu Xiu nodded and said, If that's the case, then there is no problem. Your Highness can go back and wait. Xiang Li was stunned and said, That's it? Chu Xiu asked, What else do you want to do? Can you ambush and assassinate now? Can you fight against Xiang Chong's forces? Xiang Li laughed and said, Of course not. He couldn't do anything with the little power in his hands. Otherwise, he wouldn't have asked for help from Chu Xiu. Chu Xiu spread his hands and said, since it can't be done, what else can you do besides staying there? Your Highness, you just need to go back and act. Continue acting like you are desperate. Don't let others suspect you. I believe that with your acting skills, there should be no problem. Hearing Chu Xiu say this, Xiang Li could only go back sneakily. For Xiang Li, although he was still a little nervous, he had no other choice but to trust Xiu. After Xiang Li left, Mei Qinglian walked in and said, Xiang Qinglian, Xiu is to do. After Li had left, Mei Qinglian. Of course. Otherwise, why would I talk so much nonsense with him? Chu Xiu waved his hand and a cold light flashed in his eyes. He said, they should be making their move. Xiang Long has already made his move. We cannot just sit here and wait for death. What should we do first? Mei Qinglian was also very straightforward. Since Chu Xiu had a plan, the others in Jianghu Hall could only cooperate. After all, Chu Xiu was the core of the entire Jianghu Hall. Very simple. Help me find out what Daoist Wuyang has been up to recently. At this moment, Daoist Wuyang was preparing to flee. That's right, flee. Recently, Daoist Wuyang had been keeping a low profile. To be more precise, it wasn't that he didn't want to be high profile, but reality didn't allow it. The Northern Yen was in a mess recently, with experts emerging in large numbers. With Daoist Wuyang and the Shadow Mountain sect's meager resources, he couldn't afford to be high profile. In fact, Daoist Wuyang had joined the Northern Yen long ago. In fact, when the Northern Yen allied with the Northern Yen Jianghu, he had joined the Northern Yen Jianghu. That was because the Northern Yen kingdom was the only one among the three kingdoms that was willing to cooperate with the Jianghu. Regardless of whether they were righteous or evil, they would not reject anyone. Later on, when Xiang Long and the Northern Yen Jianghu fell out, Daoist Wuyang still chose to follow Xiang Long closely. There was only one reason: he really had nowhere else to go. The Shadow Mountain sect had offended the Kunlun Devil cult, which was equivalent to offending the Hidden Devil sect. Moreover, because of their orthodoxy, they were hated and targeted by Taoism. In the vast Jianghu, if the Shadow Mountain sect dared to directly establish their own sect, who knew when Taoism and the Hidden Devil sect would come looking for trouble with them? Therefore, when Xiang Long promised that the Shadow Mountain sect could become the national religion of the Northern Yen, he had always followed Xiang Long closely. Unfortunately, even though Daoist Wuyang wasn't young anymore, he was still toyed around by Xiang Long. He had been tricked by Xiang Long for more than 10 years. From the beginning, Xiang Long's attitude towards these martial sects was to make use of them. He had never treated them as one of his own. Even if Daoist Wuyang waited his entire life, he wouldn't be able to become the national religion. It was all thanks to Chu Xiu that he could truly see Xiang Long's thoughts. After the last court session, when Daoist Wuyang saw Xiang Long's methods, his first reaction was that he should leave. The waters of the Northern Yen were getting murkier and murkier. There was no longer a place for the Shadow Mountain sect to stay. Of the three sects of Taoism, Buddhism, and Devil, the Shadow Mountain sect had enmity with two of them. This place was practically a hell. Moreover, Xiang Long was now on the verge of death. It was still unknown what the new emperor's attitude towards him would be after he ascended to the throne. If he didn't leave now, when would he? When a disciple reported that Chu Xiu had come to visit, Daoist Wuyang was stunned. He instinctively thought that Chu Xiu had come to find trouble with him. Although he believed that he had not offended Chu Xiu during this period of time, and even when others were hitting Chu Xiu while he was down, his Shadow Mountain sect still maintained a neutral stance. However, with Chu Xiu's reputation, for him to suddenly visit them would not be a good thing. However, since Chu Xiu had come personally, he had to meet him. He could only have someone bring Chu Xiu in. Seeing the disciples of the Shadow Mountain sect busily packing up, Chu Xiu asked in surprise, "Daoist Wuyang, are you preparing to leave?" Daoist Wuyang smiled bitterly and nodded. What can I do if I don't leave? Am I going to be hated by others if I stay here? It's better to leave on my own than to be chased away by others. Chu Xiu said indifferently, then, Daoist, are you willing to part with the foundation that you've worked so hard for in the northern Yen all these years? Actually, the Shadow Mountain sect did not have much of a foundation to speak of in the northern Yen. After all, they had joined the northern Yen in secret, unlike Chu Xiu's martial suppression hall, which was directly in the open. However, after so many years, the disciples of the Shadow Mountain sect had become familiar with the northern Yen. Even Daoist Wuyang did not know where to go when they were suddenly asked to leave. Daoist Wuyang said indifferently, so what if I can't bear to? Official Chu, don't tell me you can't sense the current environment in the northern Yen? I should say that Official Chu, your troubles are the greatest. Are you not anxious, Official Chu? Chu Xiu said indifferently, if there's trouble, then solve it. Can a living person die from holding his urine? Daoist Wuyang, if you leave now, there will be no place in the martial world for you. Perhaps there will be, but it will be very troublesome. So, you might as well stay in the northern Yen. The ownership of the throne, who will win and who will lose, these are still unknown. Daoist Wuyang was not stupid. When he heard Chu Xiu's words, he was instantly shocked. You're going to interfere in the fight for the throne? Chu Xiu nodded. What else? Sitting and waiting for death is not my style. Daoist Wuyang opened his mouth, wanting to say something, but not a single word came out. Although he wanted to say that Chu Xiu was very daring, the problem was that this was not the first time that Chu Xiu had done something so daring, and he had always succeeded. Once was reckless, twice was bold, and when it came to the third time, it meant that he had a card up his sleeve. Chu Xiu waved his hand and said, Daoist Wuyang, I won't hide it from you. I'm going to interfere in the fight for the throne in the northern Yen, and I need your help now. Of course, I won't force you. If you trust me, then stay in the northern Yen. If we work together, there will be a place for you in the northern Yen court. If you're afraid that you can't afford the gamble, I can understand. But after leaving the northern Yen, the days of the Shadow Mountain sect will not be easy. Daoist Wuyang gritted his teeth and thought. He was actually in a dilemma. Previously, when he was an enemy of Chu Xiu, he was beaten up by Chu Xiu. Even when news of Chu Xiu's death came, he did not dare to hit the subduing martial hall when they were down. It was because fear of a person would also give rise to a certain kind of confidence in him. If this matter was brought up by someone else, Daoist Wuyang would definitely reject it without a second thought. But since it was Chu Xiu who brought it up, it was worth considering. At this moment, Chu Xiu said, Daoist Wuyang, if you agree to work together with me, then we'll be on the same side. I can also promise you that the grudge between the Shadow Mountain sect and the Kunlun devil cult will be written off. Daoist Wuyang raised his head and looked at Chu Xiu. Are you serious? You can represent the entire Hidden Devil clan? In the past, the Shadow Mountain sect had offended Dugu Weiwei, the Kunlun devil cult. Back then, the Shadow Mountain sect had already burned incense to the heavens for not being destroyed. But because of the grudge in the past, the Hidden Devil clan was still unwilling to let the Shadow Mountain sect go. If this grudge was resolved, it could even be said that the Shadow Mountain sect had removed half of its karma. Chu Xiu said indifferently, I'm now the heir of the Hidden Devil clan. Do you think my words can represent the Hidden Devil clan? And even if there are different voices, it doesn't matter. Everywhere depends on strength. Now, in the Hidden Devil clan, the one standing behind me is Elder Wei. My clan is the strongest, so my words mean what I say. After receiving Chu Xiu's affirmation, Daoist Wuyang gritted his teeth and said, all right then, this humble Daoist will bet on this. I hope that Official Chu, you won't disappoint this humble Daoist. Chu Xiu smiled faintly and said, Daoist, don't worry. As long as it's someone who has worked with me before, there won't be any disappointment. Daoist Wuyang did not beat around the bush. He said directly, "Do you have any plans now? What should our first step be?" Chu Xiu stretched out a finger and said, "Of course there needs to be a plan. But it has to be done step by step. The first step is for you to join Xiang Chang's side. Everyone knows about the grudge between us. On the contrary, not many people know about the secret agreement between us. It's reasonable for you to seek refuge with Xiang Chong now. No one can find anything suspicious about it." Chapter 932. Many in the northern Yen knew of the relationship between Chu Xiu and Daoist Wuyang. It was Xiang Long who had sent Daoist Wuyang to the subduing martial hall to keep Chu Xiu in check. In the end, Daoist Wuyang himself failed to live up to expectations and lost to Chu Xiu. The subduing martial hall became Chu Xiu's domain, and the two sides became enemies. No one could have imagined that Daoist Wuyang would be beaten into submission by Chu Xiu. Both sides even secretly cooperated once, and the so-called enmity was long gone. So when Daoist Wuyang came to seek refuge, Xiang Chang's face was full of excitement. He directly grabbed Daoist Wuyang's hand and pulled him into the house, saying, "It is my honor that Daoist Wuyang is willing to help me. I have long heard of Daoist Wuyang's great name." Although there were many people siding with Xiang Chong, they were all people from the northern Yen imperial court. These people were not actually siding with Xiang Chong. It could only be said that they recognized Xiang Chong's position as the northern Yen crown prince and were expressing their goodwill to him. If Xiang Long threw the position to someone else the next day, these people would immediately leave, just like Xiang Li. This time, Daoist Wuyang came to seek refuge as a guest. He was one of them, so Xiang Chong's attitude towards him was naturally incomparably warm. Daoist Wuyang's gloomy old face squeezed out a smile, saying, "Your Highness is too polite. To tell you the truth, this humble Daoist was originally working for His Majesty. Now that His Majesty has given the position to Your Highness, this humble Daoist should naturally turn to Your Highness. I'm afraid that His Majesty no longer needs this humble Daoist." Daoist Wuyang's meaning was that Xiang Long was about to die. He naturally had to find another backer, and Xiang Chong was an excellent choice. Xiang Chong was very satisfied with this kind of blatant way of expressing his loyalty. He liked this kind of honest person. "Daoist Wuyang, please rest well. I will arrange a welcoming banquet for you tonight." After seeing Daoist Wuyang off, Xiang Chong's guest official, Lin Fengyu, who Chu Xiu had described as an old bull eating young grass, walked over and whispered, "Your Highness, this old Daoist of the Shadow Mountain sect is not easy to deal with. You must be careful." Lin Fengyu naturally did not see through Daoist Wuyang's weakness. He was only worried that his position would be affected by Daoist Wuyang. He was Xiang Chong's guest official. In fact, he had been Xiang Chong's guest official even when Xiang Chong was the 13th prince. Of course, this also proved how miserable he had been in the past. He could only be a follower of a prince who had been suppressed to the point of being in dire straits. Although the 13th prince had become the crown prince, he still felt a sense of crisis. In his opinion, he was His Royal Highness's guest commander. After all, he was the first one to join His Royal Highness. Of course, if it wasn't for Li Jiaodi, he wouldn't even be able to get his current position. He was just a Xiantian stage martial artist and would probably have been kicked away by Xiang Chong long ago. However, that was indeed the case. Now that Xiang Chong had kept him and given him a high position, it was also for Li Jiaodi's sake. Lin Fengyu did not feel that he was living off a woman. In his eyes, he was repaying the debt of love from his ancestors. Although in terms of age, Li Jiaodi could even be his great-grandmother, she was an expert in the true fire spirit refinement realm. According to the lifespan of someone in the true fire spirit refinement realm. Although she wasn't considered young, she wasn't too old either, right? Since it was the same with a blanket, Lin Fengyu did not feel wronged. Xiang Chong waved his hand. "Don't worry. Father has used Taoist Wuyang for so many years, why can't I? You don't know much about the background of the Shadow Mountain faction. Their ancestors had once offended the Kunlun demon sect, and they were hated and targeted by the Dao sect. In the pugilistic world, they are hated by everyone. Only the Northern Yen Kingdom can protect them. Now that Father is ready to pass the throne to me, he naturally has to come and join me. At this point, Xiang Chong snorted coldly and said, Chu Xiu is untactful, but his old rival is quite tactful. People of the pugilistic world have their advantages. They will not participate in the struggle for fame and wealth in the court. Compared to other generals and nobles, they are easier to control. In the past, Father worked with the Northern Yen pugilistic world. This is a good move. In the future, I can consider working with people of the pugilistic world. No, I should take in some people of the pugilistic world. Xiang Chong had always yearned for the pugilistic world. In the past, none of the Northern Yen royal family, nobles, military or civil officials joined him. This made Xiang Chong hate them. Even though they were now on his side, Xiang Chong still did not like them. Instead, he preferred to recruit people of the pugilistic world as his followers. However, Xiang Chong had forgotten one thing. The people who formed the Northern Yen court were not people of the pugilistic world. It was the military, the Xiang royal family, nobles, and civil officials. At the welcoming banquet that night, Taoist Wuyang began to crazily flatter Xiang Chong. Although his acting skills were not that great, he wore a gloomy expression most of the time, so no one could see any awkwardness. Although Xiang Chong spoke modestly, he was actually quite pleased. Right now, in the Crown Prince Palace, his subordinates were only Lin Fengyu and the others who had joined him. Their strength was limited. Even if they flattered him, he would not feel happy. There was also Li Jiaodi. Although she joined the Crown Prince Palace because of Lin Fengyu, with her personality, it was already good enough that she did not offend Xiang Chong with her sharp tongue. How could she flatter him? As for Kong Dongming, he was just a name to scare people. Although he was Xiang Chong's teacher in name, he had never spoken a word to Xiang Chong. That was why Xiang Chong was very satisfied that a person of power and status like Taoist Wuyang was flattering him. After 3 rounds of wine, Taoist Wuyang wiped his mouth and said, Your Highness does not care about our identity as uncivilized people and is willing to accept us. This old Taoist is truly grateful. My Shadow Mountain sect has experienced the fickleness of the world. The only ones who are willing to accept us are His Majesty and Your Highness. We will remember this kindness for generations to come. Xiang Chong waved his hand generously and said, Don't say that, Taoist. Although I was born in a royal family, I have always yearned for the pugilistic world. Moreover, I have never cared about the sects of the pugilistic world. As long as you are under my command, you are one of us. Whatever you have done in the past, I will not ask, nor care. Taoist Wuyang was moved and immediately said, Your Highness is indeed generous. Actually, there are many people like my Shadow Mountain sect who are not accepted in the pugilistic world. Although these people are not weak, their lives in the pugilistic world are also very miserable. If Your Highness does not mind, this humble Taoist can act as a middleman for Your Highness and let them join the Crown Prince Palace. I only ask for Your Highness's protection. Xiang Chong's eyes immediately lit up. Taoist, rest assured. Whether it is Taoism, Buddhism or Devil, as long as they are willing to join me, I will definitely treat them equally. Xiang Chong did not expect that his acceptance of Taoist Wuyang would actually have the effect of buying a horse's bones with 1,000 gold pieces. Even if these people were villains or traitors of the sect, he did not care. As long as they were of use to him, it was fine. A strange look appeared in Taoist Wuyang's eyes. After the banquet ended, he immediately had the disciples of the Shadow Mountain sect secretly send the news to the Suppression Martial Hall. At this moment, in the Suppression Martial Hall, Chu Xiu received the news from Taoist Wuyang and a sharp glint appeared in his eyes. Things were going very smoothly. Chu Xiu had Taoist Wuyang join Xiang Chong's ranks not to do anything to Xiang Chong at the crucial moment, but to add a few more people to Xiang Chong's side. Didn't you, Xiang Chong, want to strengthen your forces? Didn't you want the experts of the pugilistic world to join you? Chu Xiu was satisfied now. The Northern Yan imperial court had never belonged to Xiang Long or Xiang Chong alone. If Xiang Chong followed Xiang Long's plan and waited patiently for a period of time, he would naturally be able to smoothly inherit the throne. However, it was a pity that the desire for power could bring about great changes in a person. Xiang Chong had become the crown prince from a fallen prince, and he could not wait to show off. Therefore, Chu Xiu's first step was to make Xiang Chong and the Northern Yan imperial court, as well as all the Northern Yan forces, completely fall out with each other. With Xiang Long around, no matter how much Xiang Chong went overboard, no one could say anything. However, once Xiang Long died, could a crown prince who was not recognized by any Northern Yan authorities inherit the throne? This was hard to say. Mei Qinglian was by Chu Xiu's side, so she roughly understood Chu Xiu's plan. However, Mei Qinglian was still puzzled. Who are you going to place beside Xiang Chong? The Yinma clan won't work. Li Jiaodi is by Xiang Chong's side. If you place someone from the Yinma clan beside Xiang Chong, she will easily recognize them. People from the Blue Dragon Society won't work either. Ordinary killers from the Blue Dragon Society can work, but they are too weak. As for the 7 dragon heads, they are not unknown people, so it will be easy to find them. Chu Xiu smiled and said, "You forgot about a place. In Green Capital, there are many capable experts. Who can recognize them?" Mei Qinglian's eyes suddenly lit up. She had really forgotten about this place. Although the martial artists from Green Capital had stayed in that place for a lifetime, their strength was definitely not comparable to the martial artists of the same rank in the outside world. However, the weakest real pellet state was still real pellet state, and the weakest real fire spirit refinement state was still real fire spirit refinement state. However, Mei Qinglian then frowned and said, "What about their identities? If you only place one person beside Jin Chong, it will be fine. Just say that the other party is some hidden expert or something. However, if you place several people beside Jin Chong, but none of them have any identity at the same time, as if they came out from a crack in a stone, everyone will be suspicious." Chu Xiu waved his hand and said, "The identity is simple. With Wind Sweeping Tower, do you still need to worry about the identity problem? Let Wind Sweeping Tower make up a random one. But Wind Sweeping Tower will not listen to you so easily. Wind Sweeping Tower still has this bit of credibility. Forging identity information is taboo for Wind Sweeping Tower. No matter how much money you take out, Wind Sweeping Tower will not cross the bottom line." Chu Xiu said indifferently, "Bottom line? There is no such thing as bottom line in this world. If you can't do it, it is because the benefits are not enough. If the benefits are enough, I will let Wind Sweeping Tower say that pigs can fly. Wind Sweeping Tower will also record the appearance of flying divine pigs in their intelligence." Chapter 933. When Shang Tianliang heard that Chu Xiu was willing to bring out some people from the shopping mall, Shang Tianliang was of course very happy. However, Chu Xiu didn't bring many people this time, just some existences above the real pellet state. In a place like Green Capital, one's own cultivation strength was not used for fighting, but for saving one's life. Without strength, one would die. In the outside world, some people might praise you for your hard work, but in a place like Green Capital, there was no such thing as hard work at all. If you didn't work hard, you would die. Therefore, in the entire shopping mall, there were really many martial artists above the real pellet state, and there were even a few real fire spirit refinement state. Of course, in the entire shopping mall, it should be said that in the history of Shangshang, only Shang Tianliang could reach the heaven and earth mystic connection state. In a place like Green Capital, because it was impossible to perceive heaven and earth, the aura of heaven and earth was even thin to the extreme, so the bottleneck of the heaven and earth mystic connection state was much greater than the outside world. Shang Tianliang was able to step into the heaven and earth mystic connection state in this place because of his talent, and the obsession in his heart to protect the shopping mall. This time, Chu Xiu directly brought out 2 real fire spirit refinement state martial artists and 6 real pellet state martial artists. He also gave some materials to the shopping mall to ensure that they could live a more comfortable life in an environment like Green Capital. It was enough to place these people around Jinchong. Moreover, the more people there were, even if there were detailed identities, it would be suspicious. When returning to Northern Yen, Chu Xiu asked Shang Tianliang to leave with his people first, while he went to the wind-sweeping building to find Qi Yuanli. When Qi Yuanli learned that Chu Xiu came to find him, he was still a little surprised. Others didn't know about the ups and downs of the Northern Yen imperial court and the pugilistic world, but the wind-sweeping building definitely knew. Chu Xiu was one of the protagonists of these ups and downs. Now Chu Xiu should be in Northern Yen, scheming with Taoism and Buddhism, and the Northern Yen royal family. Why did he suddenly come to the wind-sweeping building? Although Qi Yuanli was puzzled, he still welcomed Chu Xiu politely. He smiled and said, "May I know why official Chu has come to my wind-sweeping pavilion?" Chu Xiu didn't beat around the bush. He said directly, "Tower Master Qi, the reason why I'm here is simple. I just want to buy something." News? Identity. Chu Xiu knocked on the table and said, "I have a few people that I need wind-sweeping tower to give them a new identity. I want them to go from nothing to something. I believe that wind-sweeping tower should be able to do this easily." Qi Yuanli immediately refused, "Official Chu, it's not that I don't want to help you, but this kind of fake identity information has violated the bottom line of my wind-sweeping tower. It's fine if we don't know all the information in the pugilistic world. After all, anemophilia isn't a god. However, even if we don't know the information, we wouldn't dare to write it, let alone fake an identity." Chu Xiu said, "I know that this matter puts wind-sweeping tower in a difficult position, so I'm not asking for your things for free. I also have a piece of information for you. It's a deal." Qi Yuanli said, "Official Chu, this is a matter of the bottom line. You can exchange any information." Before he could finish, Chu Xiu said, "What if this information is about the ancient sects during the Great Ancient Calamity?" The moment he said this, Qi Yuanli immediately swallowed back his evasive words. He immediately stood up and said, "Sir Chu, please wait a moment. I can't make the decision on this matter. I need to consult the Tower Master." After saying that, Qi Yuanli left while Chu Xiu drank his tea leisurely. Just as he thought, wind-sweeping tower had no bottom line. It was the same for everyone. The so-called bottom line was a joke. It was only because the benefits were not attractive enough. After a while, Fang Fifan came into the house. He cupped his hands and bowed to Chu Xiu. He said in a deep voice, "Official Chu, do you really know the whereabouts of those sects during the Great Ancient Calamity? Wind-sweeping tower was the top existence in the world. They didn't pursue power and influence. On the contrary, they pursued collecting all the information in the world. It could even be said that wind-sweeping tower's anemophilia enjoyed the pleasure of being the only one sober when everyone else was drunk. Just like many sects in the underworld, wind-sweeping tower knew a lot about the Great Ancient Calamity, but not much. Although they could vaguely deduce some things by combining all the information and clues, they did not have any direct evidence to prove it. What Chu Xiu said was indeed very attractive to wind-sweeping tower. Chu Xiu didn't keep them in suspense. He directly told wind-sweeping tower all the information. There were too many people who saw this. Subodhi Zen Temple and Great Light Temple both knew about it. There was nothing to hide. Chu Xiu wasn't afraid that Wind-Sweeping Tower would not help him after knowing the news. Wind-Sweeping Tower could survive until now because they were indeed very trustworthy. They almost didn't offend anyone. The pugilistic world needed a place like Wind-Sweeping Tower to provide them with information at all times. Therefore, almost no one would take action against a force like Wind-Sweeping Tower. Of course, this was on the premise that Wind-Sweeping Tower knew how to behave. The price of provoking Chu Xiu was not something Wind-Sweeping Tower could afford. After listening to Chu Xiu, Fang Feifan let out a long sigh. The Daoist, the ancient sect, still existed. This news could be said to be shocking. At least, even if Fang Feifan knew about it, he wouldn't dare to casually say it. Just like when Su Jing and the others also knew about it, they didn't say anything. Fang Feifan didn't doubt the authenticity of this news. According to Chu Xiu, there were too many people who knew about this. It would be very easy for Fang Feifan to find someone to verify it. Chu Xiu said lightly, "Tower Master Fang, I wonder if this news is enough for Wind-Sweeping Tower to forge a few fake identities for me?" Fang Feifan smiled bitterly and said, "Yes, of course." In fact, Fang Feifan would rather that Chu Xiu had never appeared. He also didn't know about this news. With Chu Xiu's reputation in the pugilistic world and his usual way of doing things, only God knew what he was going to do with these fake identities. Fang Feifan didn't dare to inquire about it. It was impossible for him to inquire about it. However, now that Chu Xiu had revealed the news, it was indeed shocking. Fang Feifan couldn't bear the consequences if he went back on his word after hearing the news. Therefore, Fang Feifan had no choice but to obediently follow Chu Xiu's request. He forged all the fake identities of those people in Green City. Then, he used the formation of Wind-Sweeping Tower to spread the news to all the branches in the pugilistic world within an hour. It had to be said that Wind-Sweeping Tower's efficiency in this aspect was very praiseworthy. After all, the pugilistic world was so big. If they relied on manpower to spread the news, how long would it take for the news to reach them? It would be too late even if they ate sh*t. Therefore, the most important thing for Wind-Sweeping Tower to do in the pugilistic world was to distinguish the importance of the news. Some of the more important news had to be sent to the headquarters as soon as possible. After returning to northern Yen, Chu Xiu didn't let Daoist Wu Wang immediately put them under Jin Chang's command. Instead, he asked someone to teach them some general knowledge of the outside world and correct their accent. The accent of ancient times was different from that of modern times. Actually, this wasn't a big deal. The pugilistic world was so big that the accents of northern Yen, eastern Qi, and western Chu were all different. Especially in western Chu, it was possible for a village to have a different accent. But there were so many experts, and they all spoke the same thing. Could it be that they were all from the same village? This was too fake. Therefore, he had to have them change their accents. Half a month later, in Xiangchong's Crown Prince Palace, Daoist Wu Wang pulled the people from Merchant City in front of Xiangchong and said proudly, "Your Highness, these are the people this humble Taoist found for you. They are all old friends of this humble Taoist in the past, but all of them have experienced many hardships in their lives." When they heard this humble Taoist say that Your Highness is broad-minded and doesn't care about their past and is willing to take them in, they were very touched and came to seek refuge with Your Highness. Of course, there are also some who have already given up and would rather cultivate in the barren mountains than come back into the pugilistic world. This humble Taoist is powerless to help these people. As he said this, Daoist Wu Wang revealed an expression of pity. Perhaps it was because he had told too many lies, but Daoist Wu Yang spoke in an incomparably natural manner, as though he really knew so many experts. At this moment, Xiangchong was almost in a daze. Previously, Li Jiaodi had joined him because of her relationship with Lin Fengyu, which had already made Xiangchong extremely happy. Later, Daoist Wu Wang brought the entire Yin Mountain sect to join him, which also made Xiangchong ecstatic. In the end, Daoist Wuang brought 2 more true fire spirit refinement realm and 6 real pellet realm martial artists. This gave Xiang Chong the illusion that he could face the Temple of Great Light head-on. Xiang Chong was stunned for a long time before saying, "Quick, quick, Daoist, quickly come and introduce the seniors to this humble palace." Daoist Wuang had memorized for a long time before, and when he heard this, he immediately pointed at one person and said, "This is the only survivor of the Qianyuan sect of the previous generation, Qianyuan Divine Palm Jianghu. 100 years ago, the Qianyuan sect was destroyed, and Brother Jiang was hunted down for more than 10 years. He hid in the 100,000 mountains, enduring the humiliation. Just as he was about to come out for revenge, he found out that his enemy's sect was also destroyed. It was truly tragic. And this is the only disciple of the rogue cultivator Daoist Guangling, Chen Yusheng. However, Daoist Guangling was killed by the big boss of the Yinma faction, 10 Directions old demon Yuan Tianfang. In order to escape, he could only change his appearance and live in seclusion in the South Sea. And this. Daoist Wuyang narrated the background that Chu Xiu had given him to Xiang Chong with great familiarity. These backgrounds were all extremely detailed, but they all had one thing in common. Although there were traces of their origins, they were all dead men who could not prove anything. For example, Yuan Tianfang, Daoist Guangling did indeed exist, but his personality was strange. Who knew if he had a disciple? Moreover, Yuan Tianfang did have a grudge against the Dao faction, and had killed many people from the Dao faction. Daoist Guangling also died in his hands. But the problem was that Yuan Tianfang had also died in the hands of Chu Xiu, so naturally there was no proof. Chapter 934. Suddenly receiving the loyalty of so many powerhouses in the pugilistic world, Xiang Chong almost lost his composure. This was a genuine true fire spirit refinement state powerhouse and a real pellet state grandmaster, and each of them had an extraordinary background. At this time, Lin Fengyu, who had been following behind Xiang Chong, said, "Your Royal Highness, although it is a good thing that so many people have joined us, isn't it a bit suspicious that so many people came all at once?" Lin Fengyu was targeting Daoist Wuyang not because he saw something wrong with Daoist Wuyang, but purely because he wanted to fight for favor. Daoist Wuyang snorted coldly, "Suspicious? What does a waste like you know? Are you doubting my friendship with them? We are all in the same boat, and I have friendship with many powerhouses in the pugilistic world. Now that your Royal Highness is tolerant, I have found them all and let them have a place to stay. At the same time, I can also increase your Royal Highness' strength. What's suspicious about that? With your ant-like cultivation, you dare to talk nonsense here. Are you looking for death?" As soon as his voice fell, an evil chill suddenly surged around Daoist Wuyang, causing Lin Fengyu to shiver. Daoist Wuyang was a martial arts grandmaster of the real pellet state, and he was one of the stronger ones. Lin Fengyu, a low-level martial artist who had only reached the innate realm, couldn't even resist the opponent's momentum. But at this time, Li Jiaodi saw someone scolding her man. She immediately frowned and waved her hand, suppressing Daoist Wuyang with a powerful aura. "Looking for death? I want to see who is the one looking for death. Daoist Wuyang, when you were chased by the hidden demon lineage and Taoism like a stray dog, why didn't you show off your power to them?" Seeing his 2 right-hand men quarreling, Xiang Chong hurriedly began to mediate. That's right, Xiang Chong had now regarded Daoist Wuyang as his right-hand man, even more so than Lin Fengyu. Although Lin Fengyu was the first to join him, his strength and ability were limited. His only advantage was Li Jiaodi, so Xiang Chong wasn't worried that he would betray him. Furthermore, Daoist Wuyang had already worked for his father for so many years. His strength and influence were both guaranteed. Now that he had even helped him recruit so many experts, he was even more important to him. Of course, Xiang Chong was not completely stimulated by such a good thing and lost his mind. Although Lin Fengyu's words were directed at Daoist Wuyang, his suspicions were reasonable. Therefore, Xiangchong sent someone to Wind Sweeping Tower to verify the identities of these people. The reputation of Wind Sweeping Tower had already formed a subconscious in the entire Jianghu. Whenever there was a need to check this kind of information, they would definitely go to Wind Sweeping Tower. Xiangchong heaved a sigh of relief when he received the report from Wind Sweeping Tower and found that it was indeed similar to what Daoist Wuyang had said. At the same time, he valued Daoist Wuyang even more. His subordinates could be said to be full of talents, but there weren't many who could really get things done. Although Lin Fengyu could be considered a loyal person, his insight and knowledge were limited. Even with Li Jiaodi's support, he couldn't achieve much. As for that cheat master of Kong Dongming, he had a reputation and strength, but for the time being, he could only be used to scare people. He was similarly useless. As such, Xiangchong also discovered that the truly capable and powerful person under him was Daoist Wuyang. If he didn't value him, who else could he value? However, at this moment, Xiangchong did not know that Daoist Wuyang, whom he valued, was in a secret stronghold of subduing Martial Hall, reporting to Chu Xiu all the details of his subordinates. Chu Xiu knocked on the table and said lightly, "If that's the case, does Xiangchong value you very much?" Daoist Wuyang said mockingly, "There isn't a single useful person under Xiangchong's command. If he doesn't value me, who else could he value?" Actually, Daoist Wuyang had the chance to betray Xiangchong. He wasn't Chu Xiu's subordinate. They were just cooperating. If he told Xiangchong about Chu Xiu's plan to send him undercover, he would definitely be seen as a benefactor by Xiangchong. However, Daoist Wuyang didn't choose to do so because he was a little afraid of Chu Xiu. This was not because he was afraid of being beaten by Chu Xiu, but because he realized that Chu Xiu had too many trump cards. In this Jianghu, there was probably no one who could truly see how many trump cards Chu Xiu had. This time, Chu Xiu had brought out 2 real fire spirit refinement state and 6 real pellet state martial artists. This strength was enough to become a first-class sect in the outside world. However, if these people didn't have fake identities, Daoist Wuyang wouldn't even recognize a single one of them. This was a little terrifying. Although Daoist Wuyang always felt that these people were a little strange, their strength was there for all to see. God knew if Chu Xiu had other trump cards. Therefore, the thought of betrayal only appeared in Daoist Wuyang's mind for a moment before it was completely thrown to the bottom of the valley. Anyway, it seemed that Chu Xiu had a higher chance of winning, at least in his opinion. Official Chu, right now, I'm enough for Xiangchong to pay attention to me. The people you sent have also become the core force that Xiangchong relies on. What should I do next? Chu Xiu sent such a strong force to Xiangchong. Daoist Wuyang didn't believe that Chu Xiu was just increasing Xiangchong's strength and stabilizing his position. Chu Xiu said in a deep voice, "It's very simple. Next, you just need to encourage Xiangchong to gather the power in his hands." Power? What kind of power? Chu Xiu squinted his eyes and said, "Of course it's the power that he hasn't controlled before, such as the military, the 5 armies of the state, or the royal service hall, etc. You just need to encourage Xiangchong to let him place the people I sent into these departments, then suppress the dissidents and fight for power." Do I still need to teach this kind of thing? Daoist Wuyang raised his eyebrows and subconsciously felt a chill in his heart. Chu Xiu's move seemed to be to increase Xiangchong's power, but it was actually very insidious. It was obviously to ruin Xiangchong's reputation. Xiangchong was not the emperor yet. Even if he did become the emperor of the Northern Yan, such wanton plundering of the power of the various departments of the Northern Yan would arouse disgust and even enmity. For example, the 5 armies of the state were the private property of the big shots in the military. All the experts in the 5 armies were almost all promoted from the bottom up. The only exception among the 5 armies was Xiang Wu. He was a spy that Xiang Long had planted in the military. But Xiang Wu was able to sit firmly in the position of the Westling Army's general because of his own strength. Secondly, although he was a member of the Northern Yan royal family, he actually grew up in the Jianghu. Even though he was promoted by Xiang Long, Xiang Wu and the Northern Yan royal family were actually not on good terms, so the 5 armies of the state did not ostracize him too much. But now, Chu Xiu wanted Xiang Chong to place people in their departments to fight for power. This would probably offend the military. So Daoist Wuyang said hesitantly, would Xiang Chong dig his own grave like this? Lord Chu, forgive me for speaking bluntly, but I've been by Xiang Chong's side for a period of time. Although this person's temperament and ability aren't very high, he's not too stupid either. He should know the consequences of such a matter. Chu Xiu waved his hand and said, of course he knows, but he will still do it. You should know what Xiang Chong was like in the early years. None of those big shots in the military chose to side with him or help him. Instead, they all went to Xiang Li's side. Having grown up in such an environment, Xiang Chong's attitude towards those people is not very good. Even if they all go to his side now, he still won't change his mind. As long as you bring it up at the right time, he won't refuse. Chu Xiu had a good eye for people, but when he first looked at Xiang Chong, he made some mistakes. Later on, he carefully studied Xiang Chong's mentality and more or less understood why the other had changed so much. The desire for power could distort a person's heart. Xiang Chong was clearly such a person. From feeling inferior to having nothing, to suddenly gaining everything, such a sudden change and distortion in mentality was something that few could withstand. And because of this, Xiang Chong had not yet gotten used to his identity. For a qualified monarch, the fickleness of human emotions was very normal. Although there were such things as burning stoves for cold stoves, when you were at your lowest point, others would not bet all their treasures on you. If such a thing happened to a qualified monarch, he would definitely laugh it off. Others were loyal to power, and if he had power, he would naturally be able to obtain the loyalty of others. Such a thing was very normal. But Xiang Chong still could not let go of the neglect and supercilious looks he had received in the past. Why would he worry about offending others? Daoist Wuyang was still somewhat hesitant towards Chu Xiu's analysis. However, since he was now standing on Chu Xiu's side, being ambivalent was a great taboo. Therefore, he could only follow Chu Xiu's words and find an opportunity to incite Xiang Chong to make a move. Several days later, after a banquet, Xiang Chong suddenly sought out Daoist Wuyang alone and asked, Daoist, I am no longer considered weak, but for some reason, I still feel that I'm lacking something. Can you tell what I'm lacking? Daoist Wuyang sneered in his heart. What you lack now is cunning. Xiang Long has already arranged everything. All you need to do is to obediently wait for Xiang Long's death and you'll be able to inherit the throne. Now, you're still stirring up trouble. If this isn't foolishness, then what is? However, Xiang Chong's question gave Daoist Wuyang a chance. He stroked his long beard and pondered for a moment. Your Highness currently has both status and strength. Logically speaking, you don't lack anything. However, there is only one thing you lack, and there is no way to make it up for now. Therefore, it's best not to say it. Xiang Chong hurriedly said, Daoist, why are you still keeping me in suspense? What exactly do I lack? Tell me first, then I'll know if it can be made up for. Daoist Wuyang's face turned solemn as he said resolutely, power. Your Highness, what you lack now is power. Chapter 935. Xiang Chong was taken aback when he heard Daoist Wuyang say that what he lacked the most was power. He laughed and said, you must be joking, Daoist. What I lack now is power. Internally, I have you, the experts of the pugilistic world, helping me, and externally, I have the identity of Crown Prince. Countless nobles from the military have come to me. Are these not power? Daoist Wuyang said coolly, "You are half right, Your Highness. Although we are your men, we are, after all, the ruffians of the pugilistic world. Our words carry limited weight in the Northern Yen Imperial Court. As for those from the military or the Imperial Sinecure Hall, although they are nominally loyal to Your Highness, if you go to the 5 great armies and see if you can mobilize the lowest ranking officer? You can't even mobilize the lowest ranking officer. Your Highness, you call this power? Your power is not power, it is just the face that those people are giving you." The smile on Xiang Chang's face gradually disappeared as he listened to Daoist Wuyang's words. That's right, this power did not belong to him. Or, it should be said that it had never belonged to him. Although those people were on his side in name, once he gave any orders, he would still need their agreement before he could command them. They were unlike Daoist Wuyang and the others who were on his side. If he told them to go east, they would definitely not dare to go west. Xiang Chong said fiercely, "Daoist Wuyang, what do you think I should do to get the power?" Daoist Wuyang shook his head and said, "Getting it is easy. Your Highness, you have such a strong force under your command. Just give an order and insert someone into the 5 great armies or the Imperial Sinecure Hall as a spy. You might not be able to get all the power, but at least a part of it is not a problem. But, I don't suggest Your Highness to do that, as it will offend the experts from the military or the Imperial Sinecure Hall. The loss outweighs the gain." It would have been better if Daoist Wuyang did not advise him, but his advice only made Xiang Chong even angrier. "I am the Crown Prince of Great Yen. In the future, the entire Great Yen will belong to me. Now, I'm not trying to usurp their positions, I'm just trying to insert some people into their ranks. Yet, they are so unwilling. Does the Great Yen belong to us, Xiang clan, or them?" Daoist Wuyang sneered in his mind. Of course, the Northern Yen belongs to Xiang clan, at least for now. But if there's no one else, do you think that the Xiang family alone can support the entire Northern Yen? Unfortunately, Xiang Chong had not thought of this point. The more Taoist Wuyang persuaded him, the more determined Xiang Chong became. He placed all the merchant city warriors sent by Chu Xiu into the 5 armies of the state and the Imperial Consecrator Hall. The merchant city martial artists that Chu Xiu had brought with him were not idiots. In fact, martial artists who grew up in a place like Green City had spent their lives fighting. Although they had not come into contact with the intrigues of the outside world, it did not mean that they did not know these things. However, Chu Xiu had already given them instructions. There was no need for them to have any scruples, and there was no need for them to care about the power struggle. They could just go as far as they could. They had to put on an appearance of insatiable greed and crazily fight for power. The more they offended these people, the better. Most things were difficult to do well, but it was very easy to do bad things. In less than half a month, the merchant city martial artists had already made the 5 armies of the state and the Imperial Consecrator Hall full of complaints. Of the 2 true fire spirit refinement state martial artists, one was thrown into the Imperial Consecrator Hall by Xiang Chong, and the other was placed in the Dongshan army in the Northern Palace. As for the 6 real pellet state martial artists, there was one from the Imperial Consecrator Hall, and one from each of the 5 armies of the state. The more they went overboard, in Xiang Chong's view, the more they did their best for him, and the more satisfied he was. In the cool breeze of Yanjing City, Chu Xiu sat in the corner by the window and drank tea, listening to Mei Qinglian's report on the various situations in Yanjing City during this time. Of course, it was mainly about Xiang Chong. Although the Cool Breeze Inn was a restaurant, its wine was not the most famous. Instead, it was a variety of dishes that were very good, especially the vegetarian dishes. It was said that the chef used to be a cook in the kitchen of the Great Light Temple. Of course, Chu Xiu had never seen the monks of the Great Light Temple in this place. Thinking about it, it was normal. Those monks had been eating vegetarian in the Great Light Temple for a lifetime. It was sad that they still had to eat this when they finally came out. Next to Chu Xiu, Tangya ordered a lot of things and ate there. He didn't even listen carefully to the conversation between Mei Qinglian and Chu Xiu. The people who played tricks had dirty hearts. Official Chu's heart was probably dirty. Xiang Chong, that kid, would definitely vomit blood because of the scheme. There was nothing good to listen to. If he listened too much, it would affect his appetite. After listening to Mei Qinglian, Chu Xiu knocked on the table and said, Xiang Chong actually didn't have the slightest doubt. It seems that I overestimated him this time. Mei Qinglian sneered and said, that kid was just a fallen prince. Although he was doted on by Xiang Long, his status was different. Xiang Long didn't have time to teach him those tricks. How good can he be? Look at the people around him. They are all like Lin Fengyu. They can't do anything right. Even Li Jiaoti's mind is not clear. The only person who can be considered to have some tricks is the spy you sent. It would be strange if he could see that something was wrong. Chu Xiu raised his teacup and shook his head. He said, what spy? That sounds bad. It's called undercover. Tangya raised his head from the pile of food and said, it's the same meaning. Before Chu Xiu could reply, Xiang Wu came up from downstairs. Chu Xiu sat on the top floor of the Cool Breeze gang. With his fierce reputation, only someone like Xiang Wu would dare to let up here. Seeing Chu Xiu here, Xiang Wu casually greeted him. So you are here, Brother Chu. No wonder it's so quiet here. There are benefits to having a good reputation. You don't even need to clear the place for a meal. As he spoke, Xiang Wu naturally sat at Chu Xiu's table. He shouted downstairs, Manager, add a plate of roasted bananas. Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows and said, famous? I'm afraid it's a bad reputation. Anyway, it's not a good one. Xiang Wu ate a mouthful of food and said fiercely, what's wrong with a bad reputation? If I had a good reputation, I wouldn't be trampled on by others. Chu Xiu thought of something and said calmly, who dares to trample on Marquis Xiang's neck? Xiang Wu said gloomily, don't keep talking about how to trample on others when you are eating. It affects my appetite. Although Xiang Wu said so, when the manager sent a plate of roasted bananas, he immediately stuffed one into his mouth. After swallowing it, he snorted coldly, it's all because of Xiang Chong. Being a crown prince, he thinks he is invincible. He even dares to plant a spy in my West Hill army. If it weren't for His Majesty's face, would have killed that spy long ago. A weak real pellet state martial artist dares to come to my territory to share power? Chu Xiu touched his chin. I seem to want to tell those martial artists in the merchant city that while fighting for power, it's best to avoid provoking Xiang Wu and the other generals of the 5 armies. These guys are not to be trifled with. For example, Xiang Wu's peak combat power is already qualified to challenge the existence of real fire spirit refinement realm, but the martial artists from the merchant city are weaker than the martial artists of the same rank. If Xiang Wu is really angry and makes a move, they may not even be able to resist 3 moves. Chu Xiu handed a cup of tea to Xiang Wu and said, I also heard about this matter. A new official has to make 3 moves, not to mention the crown prince. Of course, he wants to make some achievements. Xiang Wu sneered and said, if you want to make achievements, you have to encroach on our interests. This group of people from the Xiang family royal family is really not good. They only know how to fight for power. Chu Xiu's expression was a little strange. Is this master muddled from anger? He seems to have forgotten that he is also a member of the Xiang family. After Xiang Wu finished scolding, he reacted and stuffed another banana into his mouth gloomily. Chu Xiu asked, then what are you going to do now, Master Ho? Xiang Wu said gloomily, what else can I do? Nothing. Xiang Chong has just been appointed as the crown prince. His Majesty is already like this, and it's impossible to appoint a second one. If I find trouble with him, it is to find trouble with His Majesty. I can only endure it for now. A strange look appeared in Chu Xiu's eyes. He said, then General Beigong and the imperial family's Hall of Masters can both endure it? Xiang Wu said with a chuckle, don't be fooled by General Beigong's usual demeanor. Actually, his temper is even fiercer than mine. But I have to endure it even if I can't. Will he really turn hostile at a time like this? General Beigong has managed the Eastern Mountain Army for so many years. It's not something that others can pry open in a short period of time. My West Hill Army is the same. Anyway, there isn't too much danger for now. I can only endure it for now and think about it in the future. Only the imperial family's Hall of Masters. It is said that Xiang Chong is also unbearably angry. But that master usually keeps a low profile and is actually not someone who fights for power. He can't depose the crown prince, so he can only endure it. But he is Xiang Chong's imperial uncle. He went to reprimand Xiang Chong. But although Xiang Chong agreed verbally, he did not restrain his actions at all. Chu Xiu nodded inwardly. That's about enough. Once an impression was formed, it could not be changed. Through this incident, one could imagine how the military and the imperial family's Hall of Masters viewed Xiang Chong. And at present, other than Xiang Long, he would not listen to anyone else, not even his imperial uncle, Xiang Chong. But did Xiang Long have the energy to care about him now? Xiang Long was already doing his best to ensure that he did not die now. In this way, when Xiang Wu and the others' endurance reached the limit, it was uncertain what would happen at that time. Just as Chu Xiu wanted to ask about the details of the situation, a Jianghu Hall disciple hurriedly ran over to report that there was a problem at the Jianghu Hall. Shen Feiying had a conflict with the people from the Great Guangming Temple. The people from the Jianghu Hall had already gone to support them. Both sides were at daggers drawn. Hearing this, Xiang Wu cast a sympathetic look at Chu Xiu. These are troubled times. It seems that official Chu is having a hard time on your side. Chapter 936. Xiang Wu's sympathy made Chu Xiu a little depressed. This sudden incident directly disrupted Chu Xiu's plan. Food had to be eaten one bite at a time. Naturally, troubles had to be solved one by one. Previously, Chu Xiu's plan was to first deal with Xiang Chong and help Xiang Li ascend the throne. The Taoist and Buddhist lineages were found by Xiang Long. When the new emperor ascended the throne, Chu Xiu could naturally let the new emperor issue a decree to expel the Taoist and Buddhist lineages. Moreover, it was very simple to fall out. As long as the Northern Yan strictly ordered the people not to worship the Taoist and Buddhist lineages, the Great Light Temple and the Chunyang Dao sect could not do anything. They could control the pugilistic world, but they could not control the people of the Northern Yan unless they got rid of the Northern Yan Xiong family and replaced them with a royal family. However, who would have thought that the group of monks and Taoist priests would start to cause trouble so soon before the trouble on Xiang Chong's side was completely resolved? In fact, during this period of time, be it the Taoist and Buddhist lineages or the Jianghu Hall, these three parties were restraining themselves. Both the Daoist and Buddhist lineages focused on preaching. They tried their best to recruit talented young disciples. Chu Xiu planned to deal with Xiang Chong first. At this time, he did not want to be enemies with the Taoist and Buddhist lineages. However, the people of the Taoist, Buddhist and demon lineages did not like each other. Even if they suppressed their anger, there was no telling when the conflict would start, just like now. Chu Xiu snorted and asked Tangya to stop eating. He turned to Xiang Wu and said, "The Jianghu Hall has urgent matters to attend to. I won't accompany you." Xiang Wu nodded and said, I understand. After Chu Xiu and the others left, Xiang Wu looked at the large table in front of him that Tangya had almost finished eating. He wondered, did they pay the bill just now? In front of the giant spirit gang, Shen Feiying was confronting a group of monks with a group of giant spirit gang disciples. At this time, the giant spirit gang had completely become the vassal of the subduing martial hall. Shen Feiying was also Chu Xiu's #1 loyal dog, or rather, a mad dog. He would bite whoever he was told to bite. Of course, this was not because Shen Feiying was truly loyal, but because he had no choice but to be loyal. He had not obtained his position properly. He had colluded with Chu Xiu to kill the previous gang leader Fang Datong. That was how he had obtained the position of gang leader. Moreover, he now relied on the resources and techniques of the Jianghu Hall to step into the real pellet state. As a result, his everything was tied to Chu Xiu or the Jianghu Hall. The interests of both sides were bound together. He couldn't betray them at all. Because of this, when facing the people from the Great Light Temple, this group of monks that he could only look up to before, he did not give in at all. Masters, no matter how powerful the Great Light Temple is, you can't be so overbearing, right? Did the Great Light Temple ever put the Jianghu Hall in your eyes when you came to my giant spirit gang to ask for him? Have you ever put official Chu in your eyes? The leader of the Great Light Temple side was a middle-aged monk named Su Ning with a kind face. He was inconspicuous among the Su generation in the Great Light Temple. Although he was not the first seat in the Vajra courtyard, he was also responsible for helping Su Yan take charge of the Vajra courtyard. He was mainly responsible for teaching the disciples who had just joined the Vajra courtyard. However, he was not teaching martial arts, but was responsible for easing the stubborn flaws in the other party's mind. After all, the Vajra Heart Sutra of the Vajra courtyard could easily make one's anger rise. Su Ning's expression did not change as he said, "Gang leader Shen, it's not that the Great Light Temple is overbearing, but that the giant spirit gang has gone too far. Just now, the Great Light Temple was about to accept the Wang family's disciple into the temple, and then you destroyed the Wang family and took away the Wang family's disciple. Isn't this targeting the Great Light Temple?" The conflict between the Great Light Temple and the giant spirit gang was very simple. The Great Light Temple could come to the northern Yen to preach, so naturally, they had to travel all over the northern Yen Jianghu to find suitable disciples. Actually, the Great Light Temple had always given the people of Jianghu a bad impression. Most people felt that the Great Light Temple was too overbearing and liked to meddle in other people's business. Therefore, this time, the Great Light Temple changed their attitude from before. They visited some of the small forces in the northern Yen and personally visited them to give pointers on the martial arts of the small forces. Of course, they also preached Buddhism at the same time, although basically no one was willing to listen to the latter. However, this also made many of the small forces lower their guard, and it really allowed the Great Light Temple to find many disciples who met their requirements. The Wang family's disciple was one of them. The Wang family was a small aristocratic family around Yanjing City, and the head of the Wang family was only in the physical invulnerability realm. Knowing that his son could become a disciple of the Great Light Temple, the head of the Wang family was very excited. He subconsciously thought that he had become someone who had a backer. His son was not even 20 years old and had not even begun to roam the Jianghu. He did not understand what it meant to become a monk in the Great Light Temple. He only knew that he seemed to have a backer who was thousands of times stronger than his father. However, to join the Great Light Temple, one still needed to undergo a series of rituals such as tonsure. The Great Light Temple was prepared to let the Wang family's disciple wait for a period of time until the Great Light Temple recruited a sufficient number of disciples, then they would undergo tonsure together. Who would have thought that after waiting for such a long time, an incident would occur? The Wang family happened to be under the control of the giant spirit gang. According to the rules of the Jianghu Hall, the Wang family had to give a portion of their monthly income to the giant spirit gang as a tribute. Now that the Wang family had a backer, they were naturally unwilling to hand over this portion of the tribute. They even had a conflict with the members of the giant spirit gang. The disciple of the Wang family was too young. In his anger, he did not hold back. He even ambushed and killed a member of the giant spirit gang. This angered Shen Feiying. If the Wang family had only said that their son was about to join the Great Light Temple, the giant spirit gang would not have forcefully taken that portion of the tribute. Chu Xiu had decided to deal with Xiang Chong first, so he had already instructed the people of the Jianghu Hall to make appropriate concessions to the Daoist and Buddhist sects in some small areas. However, now that someone had died, it was a slap in the face for the giant spirit gang. It was also a slap in the face for the Jianghu Hall and Chu Xiu. Therefore, Shen Feiying had ordered the extermination of the Wang family and the capture of the Wang family disciple. Big monk, don't accuse me. The Wang family disciple killed one member of the giant spirit gang, so the giant spirit gang will exterminate his entire family. The giant spirit gang is now following official Chu. If we can swallow this kind of insult, then we will be disgracing official Chu. Su Ning put his palms together and chanted the name of Buddha. This penniless monk does not want to talk about gratitude and grudges, right and wrong. However, killing is not too much. The dozens of members of the Wang family were all exterminated in the hands of the giant spirit gang. This killing is enough, right? The dead cannot be resurrected. This penniless monk will not kill dozens of members of the giant spirit gang to avenge the Wang family. Therefore, this penniless monk only asks Chief Shen to hand over the Wang family disciple to this penniless monk. Shen Feiying didn't even think about it and directly refused. Impossible. It was this kid who killed them first. If we hand over the culprit, how will the other Northern Yen pugilistic world people look at the Jianghu Hall? Moreover, the giant spirit gang exterminated the Wang family. That kid must hate the giant spirit gang to the bone. How can I let this kid go and find trouble for myself in the future? Su Ning sighed and said, since this is the case, then there is no other way. Chief Shen does not want to hand over the person, so this penniless monk can only take him by force. As Su Ning's voice fell, the fierce and violent golden gang qi around his body suddenly erupted. The Vajra's angry eyes could destroy evil and subdue demons. Su Ning was one of the few people in the Vajra yard who could suppress the side effects of the angry eyes Vajra Heart Sutra with his own state of mind. Therefore, he appeared to be extremely calm most of the time. But even if he was calm, he was also from the Vajra yard. This angry eyes Vajra Heart Sutra was also fierce and extremely violent when it was performed to the extreme. The demon subduing seal landed. Shen Feiying only took such a move, and he was directly blasted out. His internal organs were shaken, and he resisted spitting out a mouthful of blood. His eyes were full of horror. Shen Feiying had just stepped into the real pellet state not long ago, and his own strength and talent were indeed not good. Although he stepped into the real pellet state with the resources of the Jianghu Hall, his own strength was still very weak. In the same realm, the gap in combat power was also the same. Shen Feiying's strength was almost the worst in the real pellet state. He might even be inferior to the martial artists who came from the mall and were not familiar with the power system of the outside world. At least, his physical body was strong, and he was relatively resistant to beatings. Unlike him, he was almost beaten to vomit blood after just one move. Su Ning's face remained unchanged, and another demon subduing seal landed. Su Yan also told them before that the main purpose of coming to the Northern Yen sect was to preach. Grudges and troubles should be avoided as much as possible. Therefore, he didn't make a ruthless move this time. He just wanted to temporarily abolish Shen Feiying's combat power, save him, and leave. However, at this moment, a violent gust of wind suddenly exploded. The power was so strong that it caused Su Ning's expression to change abruptly. The demon subduing seal abruptly changed its direction and blasted to the side. There was a loud explosion, and a burst of aura fluctuations burst out. Su Ning suddenly felt a huge force hitting his body. The golden Buddha aura around his body flourished, resisting this force, but he was still blasted back a few steps. When the smoke and dust dissipated, Yen Bugue stood there with a giant sword in his hand, expressionless. However, the ground where the two of them collided just now had a huge pit. Shen Feiying hurriedly said, "Master Yen came at the right time. Without Master Yan's timely rescue, I'm afraid our giant spirit gang can't stop these monks." Yen Bugue just glanced at Shen Feiying and didn't even say a word. Shen Feiying also knew the character of official Chu's confidant. The other party was not good with words, but it didn't matter as long as he knew how to fight. On the other hand, Su Ning frowned and thought, this is troublesome. Yen Bugue's name was not well known in the underworld, but in the northern Yen sect, especially those who paid attention to the Jianghu Hall, everyone knew him. Chu Xiu dug out his confidant from the wilderness. He was powerful, ruthless, and quiet. He was definitely a difficult character to deal with. Chapter 937. The conflict with the giant spirit gang was actually because of a small matter. Su Ning originally did not want to make a big deal out of it. Originally, he thought that with the Great Light Temple stepping in, Shen Feiying would definitely let the person go. However, he did not expect Shen Feiying's attitude to be so tough. Now that even one of Chu Xiu's confidants, Yen Bugue, had come personally, the risk of this matter becoming a big deal had increased. Su Ning said in a low voice, "Lord Yen, is it worth it for the suppression hall to make such a big deal out of it with the Great Light Temple just for such an ordinary disciple?" Yen Bugue did not speak. He just raised the heavy sword in his hand and pointed it at Su Ning. His meaning was clear. He would kill whoever came. Just as Su Ning was about to say something, a cold voice suddenly said, "Is it worth it?" This is not a question of whether it is worth it or not. It is that no one can take him away from the hands of the suppression hall. Seeing that Chu Xiu had arrived with Mei Qinglian and the others, Su Ning immediately knew that this was not good. How did such a small matter provoke Chu Xiu? Su Ning's attitude was still very strong when facing Shen Feiying and the others. However, when facing Chu Xiu, he really did not have the qualifications to be tough. Su Ning put his palms together and said helplessly, "Official Chu, we do not want to take him away. It is just that the Wang family disciple is a disciple that the Great Light Temple is prepared to take in and shave his head. We just want him back." Chu Xiu said indifferently, "Is that so? But what does this have to do with him killing people from the suppression hall? Putting aside the fact that he is not a disciple of the Great Light Temple, even if he has officially shaved his head and become a disciple of the Great Light Temple, do you think that he will be safe and sound after killing someone from the suppression hall? The people from the Great Light Temple think too highly of themselves." Su Ning's expression suddenly changed. Chu Xiu's words were somewhat like a slap in the face. At that moment, another group of monks walked over from afar. Su Yen led two old monks from the Temple of Great Light over with a grim expression. Su Yen could not be blamed for being anxious. This matter had happened too suddenly. He had not expected that his side would have a conflict with Chu Xiu so quickly. He had already heard about Su Ning's punishment from some of the disciples who had come to inform him. Su Ning's punishment was not wrong. The Great Temple of Light had already decided to take in the Wang clan's disciple. This matter had already been publicized by the Wang clan's clan leader. In the end, not only had the Wang family been annihilated, but if they had not gotten their people back, they would have lost face for the Great Guangming Temple. In the eyes of others, if the Great Light Temple could not even protect its own disciples, then what was the point of running to the Great Light Temple to be a monk? He even had to abstain from alcohol and women. If he was so useless, he might as well go to the Northern Yen Imperial Court and become a eunuch. Therefore, they had to return. Otherwise, the Great Light Temple's reputation would be tarnished. How could they continue to preach in the Northern Yen? They might as well return to the northern lands to recite their scriptures. Official Chu, for the sake of a Wang clan disciple, you actually took action personally. Is it worth it? Su Yan asked in a low voice. Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes and said, for the sake of a Wang clan disciple, didn't the Great Light Temple also send out 3 true fire spirit refinement realm powerhouses? Is it worth it? Su Yan shook his head and said, to the Great Light Temple, all lives are equal. If something had happened to Su Ning, the Great Light Temple would have done its best to save him. Now that something has happened to a disciple who has yet to enter the sect, the Great Light Temple will also do its best to save him. Chu Xiu laughed and said, what a good all lives are equal. Just nice, I, Chu Xiu, am the same. Everyone is equal in my eyes. There is no one I cannot kill. With that, Chu Xiu waved his hand and said, bring that Wang clan brat out. Shen Feiying was stunned. Was the Lord prepared to hand over the person? However, he did not dare to ask too much. He could only obediently bring the person out. That Wang clan disciple was very young. From the looks of it, he was not even 20 years old. At that moment, he was trembling in fear. He did not know at all how much of an impact he had caused because of his momentary impulse. Previously, when he was in the Wang clan, he was the only son of the Wang clan master and was doted on. Therefore, not only did the Wang clan master not bear to let him roam the martial world, he did not even let him interfere in the clan's matters. This also caused this Wang clan disciple to be fearless because he did not know anything. He did not know what the subduing martial hall represented, nor did he know what the Great Light Temple represented. However, he was not an idiot. Seeing so many powerhouses in front of him, he was so scared that he could not even say a word. The Great Light Temple wants this brat? He's very ordinary. I wonder what your Great Light Temple sees in him. A cold smile appeared on Chu Xiu's face as he said, a life for a life, and a debt must be repaid. This has been a rule since ancient times. Even your Great Light Temple cannot change it. Don't you want the person? Fine, I'll give the person to you, but I'll take his life back. It was not Su Yan's first time dealing with Chu Xiu. Looking at Chu Xiu's expression, he knew that something was going to happen. However, before he could speak, Chu Xiu snapped his fingers. In that instant, there was a slight fluctuation in the essence qi between heaven and earth. However, it was this slight fluctuation that affected the Wang clan disciple's heart, causing it to beat violently. It was this one beat that instantly shattered the Wang clan disciple's heart meridian, and he lost all signs of life in an instant. Seeing that the person he wanted was killed in front of him, Su Yan roared angrily, Chu Xiu. A life for a life, and a debt must be repaid? Your subordinates have already annihilated the entire Wang clan. Is it not enough to pay with their lives? Chu Xiu spread his hands and said, is that so? Sorry, I really forgot to ask about this. However, the result is the same. The lives of my Jianghu Hall people are more valuable, can't they? Chu Xiu's appearance could simply make people vomit blood. Su Yan couldn't stand it even if he had a good temper. Behind him, a glaring Vajra form bloomed, and a dazzling golden Buddha's light shone out. With a palm to subdue the demon, it blasted toward Chu Xiu with the power to shatter mountains and split the earth. Su Yan, an existence who had just stepped into the true fire spirit refinement state not long ago, Chu Xiu didn't take him seriously at all. When the other party was in the real pellet state, he didn't take him seriously. Now that he had stepped into the true fire spirit refinement state, Chu Xiu didn't take him seriously either. Taking a step forward, Chu Xiu's body was burning with inner force and true fire. He punched out, and the mountain and sea fist scripture carried a majestic might as it met the palm of the glaring Vajra. Chu Xiu's punch was very similar to Emperor Chen Qing's. Wherever the fist passed, mountains would shatter and the earth would crack. It was invincible. That powerful force caused Su Yan's expression to change. A crack appeared on the glaring Vajra form behind him under this punch, and the Buddha's light instantly dimmed. When he left the Great Light Temple, Su Jing told him to be careful of Chu Xiu. At that time, Su Yan thought that Su Jing was telling him to be careful of Chu Xiu's endless means. Now, he knew that Su Jing was also telling him to be careful of Chu Xiu's unreasonably strong strength. Seeing that Su Yan was unable to hold on any longer, the two Jing generation monks who had come with Su Yan did not hesitate to attack. They were already people who were nearing the end of their lifespans. They felt that it was a gain to be able to make one last contribution to the sect in this life. Naturally, they didn't care whether the siege would affect their reputation or not. The Buddha's light around one of the old monks condensed into runes that circled around him. As he pointed out the runes one by one, the Buddha's light runes turned into a matrix that enveloped Chu Xiu. If someone were to look from above, they would notice that the matrix was like a Buddha's lotus that was constantly blooming. Chu Xiu was in the center of the Buddha's lotus, and he was being suppressed by the endless Buddha's light. The other old monk was shrouded in an extreme Buddha's light. He chanted the name of Buddha, but it was not Amitabha. Instead, it was the Namo Unbreakable Vajra Buddha. The golden Buddha's light seemed to have dyed his entire person into a golden Buddha. As his palm landed, everywhere it passed by, even the vital chi of the universe began to crumble. It was just a simple palm, but it contained the most extreme power of Buddha's light. Among the old monks from the Great Light Temple, those who could survive until the end all had some tricks up their sleeves. All of them had trump cards that they could bring out. However, when Chu Xiu saw this scene, he snorted coldly. Do you really think that Buddha's light can suppress evil and slay demons? You guys have been practicing Buddhism all your lives, but I'm afraid you guys don't even know what Buddha is. As Chu Xiu's voice landed, his entire body also bloomed with a brilliant and magnificent Buddha's light. Amidst the scorching Buddha's light, Mahavairocana descended. His Dharma form was dignified, and as he put his palms together, endless Buddha's flames bloomed, instantly shattering the Buddha's lotus matrix. However, at the next moment, Chu Xiu's Dharma form of Mahavairocana underwent a strange change. The dignified Dharma form became angry and evil, and a black dot appeared between Mahavairocana's eyebrows. The black dot spread out like ink, and at the next moment, Mahavairocana had already turned into the Mahakala demon god, whose entire body was emitting apocalyptic flames. The extreme of light was darkness, and Mahavairocana was Mahakala. The palm landed, and the palm, which contained endless power of nirvanic destruction, sent the old monk, who was shrouded in Buddha's light, flying. The extremely domineering power of nirvanic destruction continued to corrode the Buddha's light, and the Buddha's light around the old monk began to shatter like a shattered armor. It fell to the ground, and even corroded a large pit in the ground. Chu Xiu took a step forward and said coldly, Buddha. In my territory, even Buddhas have to abide by the rules. Su Yan, from the first day you stepped into Yanjing City, you should have known that this day would come. Su Yan's face turned pale, and he was about to join the other two Jing cohort monks in attacking when a faint aura came from afar. Chu Xiu and Su Yan looked in that direction at the same time, and they both frowned. It was Shi Yunzi from the Chunyang Dao sect. Shi Yunzi merely watched from afar and did not come over. When he sensed Chu Xiu and Su Yan looking over, Shi Yunzi even waved at them, indicating that they could ignore him and continue. Seeing this, Su Yan snorted coldly, turned around, and left with his people. Chu Xiu's eyes flickered with uncertainty, but he did not continue to cause trouble for the Great Light Temple. Chapter 938. The biggest problem with the three lineages of Taoism, Buddhism, and Diabolism all gathered in one place was that no matter which side started the battle first, the last to benefit would be the side that won. Therefore, after seeing Shi Yunzi, Su Yan chose to leave directly. The disciple of the Wang family had already been killed. It would be useless for him to take action again except to vent his anger. It was the same for Chu Xiu. He still had a lot of troubles to deal with. How could he have the leisure to fight to the death with the people from the Great Guangming Temple? Because of the existence of the Chunyang Dao sect, the two sides could not fight for the time being. They each took a step back and could only stop for the time being. After causing such a big mess, Shen Feiying was still a little perturbed. He did not know if it was right for him to do so. Chu Xiu comforted Shen Feiying. He was so tough, but he did not lose the face of the Jianghu Hall. What was wrong with it? However, this matter was still a problem. It seemed that he had to modify his plan. Previously, Chu Xiu was ready to deal with Xiang Chong first, and then deal with the Taoist and Buddhist lineages. Now, Xiang Chong's layout was almost done. He just had to wait for Xiang Long to die. However, the problem was that Xiang Long was still stubbornly holding on. No one knew when he would die. It was impossible for Chu Xiu to assassinate Xiang Long now, so he had to continue to wait. However, during this period of waiting, it was obvious that the Taoist and Buddhist lineages were not so easy to deal with. Even if he did not provoke them, some accidents would still happen. This was the real problem. After returning to the Jianghu Hall, Chu Xiu had been thinking about this matter. In the end, before he could come up with a suitable solution, the Jianghu Hall was competing with the Chunyang Dao sect again. The reason was also the Jianghu forces of the Northern Yan. In the past, the Jianghu Hall ruled the Northern Yan martial arts world, or it could be said to suppress them. The advantage was that the entire Northern Yan martial arts world could not use weapons without permission, reducing the fighting between each other. However, the disadvantage was that all the sects under the jurisdiction of the Jianghu Hall had to offer offerings to the Jianghu Hall. When had these underworld forces ever suffered such a great injustice? To the Northern Yan imperial court, they were just like ordinary merchants who had to pay some taxes. As for the precious cultivation resources, they never had to pay taxes. The way Chu Xiu handled things was even more overbearing than the Northern Yan imperial court. However, although they were overbearing, the strength of the Jianghu Hall was still there. In the past, Chu Xiu had destroyed many families in the Northern Yan land. His ferocious might was still there, so even though the martial arts forces in the Northern Yan land were indignant, they did not dare to jump out and cause trouble. But this time, the arrival of Chunyang Dao sect and Great Guangming Temple made them see that their opportunity seemed to have come. He, Chu Xiu, was not the only one in the Northern Yan martial arts world. Although the Wang family was destroyed by the giant spirit gang, it also let others see that at least the Great Guangming Temple and Chunyang Dao sect dared to challenge the Jianghu Hall in the Northern Yan land. Therefore, many forces selected by the Chunyang Dao sect as disciples secretly colluded with each other to resist the warriors who came to collect the monthly salary from the Jianghu Hall. Moreover, they also learned from the previous lesson of the Wang family being destroyed. They even informed the Chunyang Dao sect in advance to come and directly confront the Jianghu Hall. When the news reached Chu Xiu's ears, Chu Xiu could not help but show a strong murderous intention in his eyes. Some people did not learn from their mistakes. Even when he had just entered the Northern Yan land a few years ago and killed many people, these people were still willing to plot against him for some benefits. Some people said that human nature was good, and some said that human nature was evil. But in Chu Xiu's view, human nature itself was a combination of various complex emotions and thoughts. Greed, anger, obsession, hate, love, evil desire, 7 emotions and 5 poisons were all present. At this time, it was also reasonable to say that this group of people was greedy. Over the years, Chu Xiu asked them to hand in their offerings. Every time they paid, their hearts would hurt as if their flesh was cut. At this time, they got the opportunity, but this group of people could not stand it anymore. They jumped out, to court death. This could not be opened. The Jianghu Hall suppressed the Northern Yan martial arts world by relying on knives and rules. If he did not do anything this time, it would be breaking the rules. Therefore, after he just attacked the Great Guangming Temple, Chu Xiu could only attack the Chunyang Dao sect again. At this time, in the Yanjing city branch of the Chunyang Dao sect, Shi Yunzi and his martial uncle Mako Mori were actually not very clear about this matter. This was the decision of those small forces. After they had discussed it and forced the people of the Jianghu Hall away, they reported to the Chunyang Dao sect and asked for their protection. In fact, they were forcing the Jianghu Hall to abdicate because they knew that the Chunyang Dao sect would not ignore them. Otherwise, how could the Chunyang Dao sect gain a foothold in the northern Yan land? After hearing this news, Shi Yunzi's expression suddenly changed, and he scolded loudly, "Bastard! Idiot! Idiot!" Shi Yunzi had never been serious before, and it was rare for him to even be angry. At this time, the disciples of the Chunyang Dao sect were shocked when they saw Shi Yunzi's sudden rage. It was no wonder that Shi Yunzi was furious at this time. He even had the intention to kill. This group of small forces usually did not think about making progress. It was not easy for them to have a little cleverness, but in the end, they used it to plot against the Jianghu Hall. But in fact, they had outsmarted themselves. It could even be said that they were playing with fire. He had seen the conflict between Chu Xiu and the Great Guangming Temple before. At the moment, Chu Xiu was definitely not having a good time. If this group of people did not want to pay the offerings, they could use the Chunyang Dao sect to refute them in a neither soft nor hard manner when the disciples of the Jianghu Hall came to collect the offerings. The Jianghu Hall would definitely not continue to be tough. There was no need to make this matter public, and the Jianghu Hall would not publicize it. In the end, the meat would be rotten in the pot, and no matter how it was eaten, it would be their own. In the end, this group of idiots joined forces to rebel against the Jianghu Hall and broke the rules set by the Jianghu Hall. This was simply challenging the bottom line of Chu Xiu. According to Shi Yunzi's understanding of Chu Xiu, at this time, he was probably already on the way to kill people with his saber. Mako Mori, who was rumored to have a bad temper, was very calm at this time. He stood up and said faintly, "It's useless even if you scold me. If this Jianghu was full of rational people, if they were all smart people, then there would not be so many gratitude and grudges, and there would not be so many killings in the Jianghu. In fact, most of the people in this Jianghu are actually idiots who think they are smart, including my Chunyang Dao sect. There are many such people. If you need to fight, kill, or fight, then come. I will follow you to the northern Yan, and I can't help you with my old brain. The sect master sent me here to prepare me to raise my sword and kill people at the critical moment. Now, I really want to see how amazing the person who is known to be the most outstanding among this generation of young people can be." Shi Yunzi looked at Mako Mori with some surprise. It was said that this martial uncle had a bad temper, but now it seemed that he was the one who saw through it the most. He did not know what he experienced when he was in closed-door cultivation that could make his state of mind change so much. At this time, in a manor outside Yanjing City, in the Feng family manor, the martial artists of several forces gathered. This time, they joined forces to expel the martial artists who were collecting offerings from the Jianghu Hall, and they used the Chunyang Dao sect as a shield. In fact, there were many forces that were selected by the Chunyang Dao sect to be disciples in the entire northern Yan, and it was far from just these few forces. The younger generation of the Chunyang Dao sect had a shortage of young people, so they were not as strict as the Great Light Temple in recruiting disciples. It was fine as long as they were a little passable. However, the other forces were a little timid. After hearing that they were going to join forces to resist the Jianghu Hall, they were so scared that they closed their doors and refused to see any guests. There were only a few people present who were brave. However, after doing it, they were a little flustered. After doing it, they only knew how to be afraid. Chu Xiu's murderous nature was well known in the pugilistic world. Could the Chunyang Dao sect stop him? Moreover, the news had already been released. Why hadn't the Chunyang Dao sect come? One of them clapped his hands and said regretfully, "Sai, back then I said, don't do this, don't do it. Even if you want to do it, you have to be safe. You have to test the pure Yang Dao sect's attitude before doing it. Now, the people from the Chunyang Dao sect haven't come yet. I'm afraid the Jianghu Hall has already received the news. What if the Chunyang Dao sect is a step behind? A gloomy old man sitting on the main seat snorted coldly. Are you regretting it now? It's too late. Since it has already been done, there is no room for regret. What's the use of complaining? This is a big gamble. If we win, we will no longer have to be oppressed by the Jianghu Hall. Even we, the pioneers, can become famous in the Northern Yen martial arts world. This old man was the current villa master of Fengjia village. This time, he was the first to propose to join forces. Someone hesitated and said, "But what if we lose the gamble?" Villa Master Feng sneered and said, "Lose the gamble? If we lose, our whole family will be exterminated and we will be doomed eternally." Everyone present suddenly fell silent. However, at this moment, a disciple of Fengjia village ran in awkwardly and said while trembling, Villa Master. Bad news. Chu Xiu has brought the people from the Jianghu Hall to fight. Upon hearing this, everyone present suddenly turned pale as if the end of the world had come. The man who spoke previously held his head and trembled as if he was about to cry. He kept murmuring, I told you not to be so hasty. Now that the god of death, Chu Xiu, is here, our whole family will be exterminated and we will all die." Although Villa Master Feng's face was also pale, he still stood up and kicked the man. He scolded, "Since we are all going to die, we might as well die with dignity." Now that Chu Xiu is being suppressed by the Northern Yen Imperial Court, he is not having a good time. After we go out, try to delay as much as possible. As long as we can delay until the Chunyang Dao sect arrives, we will be saved. Villa Master Feng was still considered courageous as he led his people out of Fengjia village. Seeing that Chu Xiu had already brought a group of Suppression Martial Hall's ancient martial art practitioners to surround the entire Feng family village, Village Master Feng forcefully cupped his hands and said, "Lord Chu, now that the disciples of our clans have already joined the pure Yang Dao sect, regarding the matter of the offerings, Before Villa Master Feng could finish speaking, Chu Xiu had already waved his hand expressionlessly and spat out a word, "Kill." You're tuning in to the Unparalleled SwordWill YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.